The war has begun. It must become decisive for humanity. The fate of many nations depends on it. The enemy army was led by a monster that fell to Earth from outer space. It was a mighty dragon. But to oppose him, among the inhabitants of the Earth, those who are called superhumans appeared. Although countless numbers of them died in this war, it seemed that victory would be very close. However, the oracle gave his prophecy. He predicted that 15 years after the war, the monsters from outer space would return. Therefore, a special institution was created that was engaged in the development of super abilities and was called ARC. Children with innate super abilities were admitted to this institution, and they were prepared for the last battle with the enemy. Although there was not much time left for this, namely 3 years. A young soldier had a terrible dream in which he and his brothers competed in a fierce battle against alien monsters. In the dream, there were all the horrors of war that can only be imagined, and the dream ended with the death of the boy himself. After coming to his senses a little, the young man realized that today the recruitment campaign ends, and the last batch of recruits endowed with superpowers will come to them. They were delivered by helicopters to speed up the task. A very young boy turned out to be the head of the saboteurs' orphans, and his name is Li Han, and he is only 10 years old. This fact amazed the military. The young boy sat very quietly and with an incredibly serious face, because he did not know where and why he got there. A man in a military uniform reassured the boy by saying that the boy was not being sent to prison, but he asked what the new recruit knew about the ARC facility. Li Han said that the military sometimes talks about the Special Institution for the Development of Superhuman Abilities, ARC, and wondered if the military considers him a person with superpowers. The older man answered the young man that he is very smart. And he also added that Li Han is not just a Superman, but the future savior of humanity. And from this moment on, a new life begins for the little one, where he will be fed, sleep on a bed, and always be warm. But the boy did not want such a life, because only he could get all this. And his brothers will continue to be in the cold and without a roof over their heads. Li Han set his condition. He will join the ARC only if the command takes responsibility for his brothers. The man in uniform agreed to this, but he also had a condition without which their contract would not be valid. Namely, the new recruits' brothers will stay as long as Li Han himself will stay in this institution. The military asked if everything was clear to the boy. The little one agreed with everything. The boy was dropped off at the gate of the ARC facility. The commander said goodbye to the young man that his power rank is not high, so he needs to do everything to survive, because the lives of his brothers depend on it, if they are important to him. Entering the territory of the ARC facility, Li Han saw a black-haired boy crying non-stop. The recruit girl decided to rebuke the boy, saying that only because of crybabies like him, conscripts are looked at as an empty place. The crowd came to the boy's defense, saying that the young lady was no better than them. But the boy maliciously ordered even to compare himself to her, because the power of her innate abilities is so high that it is simply impossible for them. He added that he is an experienced owner of superpowers, and in confirmation of his words, he showed how he makes stones hang in the air with the power of thought. Everyone who was present was very surprised because for the first time, they see a real owner of superpower in action. The long-haired young man asked the crybaby a rhetorical question, whether he would be sent home if she crippled him. After all, he won't survive here anyway. Adding that he was doing the defenseless boy a favor, he threw a stone at him. Suddenly, Li Han stopped the stone with his hand. The boy added that it was very slow, and it would be more logical to just throw the stone with his hand. Del Simon got angry and asked who he was and why he was talking to him like that. Li Han replied that he would be a teacher of good manners for him. The crowd cheered both and were eager to see the battle. The children are about to beat each other up until suddenly the commander approaches them and instantly calms them down. After that, he asks the names of both. The boy with long hair introduced himself as Del Simon, and the little one was named Li Han. The commander turned to the senior. He knew that the boy was undergoing training and asked if he had already shown any abilities. Del replied that at the moment he can only possess telekinesis. Without thinking long, the commander hit the long-haired recruit right in the stomach, adding that as soon as one skill woke up in him, Del already managed to pick up his nose. This should serve as a lesson for him. The commander turned to Li Han. He praised his tendency to help the weak. After that, the soldier hit the younger recruit in the same way, but he added that if Khan has even less strength than his opponent, then he is an even bigger fool. After the instructive conversation, the man addressed all the new recruits. He said that the first academic year will start in 3 weeks. All those who do not awaken super ability in 3 weeks will be counted out. Only after all this did the man introduce himself to the students. He introduced himself as John Red. His task is to be an instructor for new recruits, and during the training period, the recruits must transform from bio-waste into fighting superhumans and defeat a dragon and an army of evil invaders from outer space. Li-Han and Del did not have time to take a good breath from the instructor's teasing, when the whole group was immediately tasked with running around the stadium and running until the instructor said stop. In the first couple of minutes, a large number of conscripts could not hold out, so they were automatically excluded. Anyone who stops before the instructor says will be immediately disqualified. Such loads are not new to Li-Han. He is already used to physical work, but the boy was worried about whether he would awaken his superpowers and whether he even had them. During the run, the boy who used to cry could not show a good result and fell down. The instructor was about to dismiss the crybaby, but Li-Han ran up and pulled the weaker one on his shoulders. After all, although the boy has no strength, he has not given up yet. After that, John Red shouted the stop command. Everyone who remained in the stadium immediately collapsed from impotence. The instructor counted the number of recruits. Out of 73, there were only 40 conscripts left. After the warm-up ended, the instructor added that such a warm-up would take place every day, so the attendees should not relax. And the next day, the young men will have real training, which will be much more difficult. The next day started with a morning run at 5 in the morning. Li-Han and Del were ahead and competing against each other. The next item on the schedule of ARC recruits was breakfast at 8 in the morning. After exactly an hour, the morning classes began, during which the instructor talked about how to discover inner strength. The recruits needed to find the source of their superpower with inner vision. Everyone must focus on this. John Red said that the source can be in the head or in the heart, and sometimes even in the lower chakra. It doesn't matter where, it's important to find an image. Li-Han tried to find strength in his heart. After the informative classes, the young men have their next meal at 12:30. Having taken his portion, our hero approached his first tearful friend at the ARC Academy. His name is Kuro and offered to eat together. As soon as Li-Han sat down at the table, he immediately made eye contact with Del Simon. Kuro said that the long-haired boy attended courses for gifted children in Great Britain. After that, the hero was not surprised why Del was so self-confident. But our hero was annoyed by the fact that his opponent gained strength faster than he did, and hoped that this week he and Kuro would also discover their strength. But suddenly, a tearful friend told that he already has the power of telekinesis. Our hero was very surprised by such a situation, and after considering everything came to the conclusion that it would be better if he took care of himself as well as others. After the meal, evening classes, combat practice, and an evening run began. Then shower, dinner, and roll call. The retreat was at 10 in the evening, but Li-Han did not sleep. Although he longed for good conditions and could not sleep in a new place, he wanted to go home, but he convinced himself otherwise, for the sake of a better future for himself and his brothers. 3 weeks of such training and schedule had passed. Many of the boys around him had already found their own telekinesis power, but Li-Han himself had never been able to do it. The hero decided to act. He asked about theoretical knowledge from his friend Kuro, but tearfully replied that he could not explain how to learn telekinesis. There was only one person left who knew the theory well, and that was Del. Due to the hopeless situation, Li-Han decided to turn to his enemy for help. Del smugly greeted Li-Han and said he knew the theory, but ordered him to kneel before him first. Our hero obeyed him and, sitting on his knees, asked to teach him telekinesis. The long-haired boy ordered Li-Han to get up and fulfilled his promise. He asked for a pencil, and a moment after that, he drove it right into the main character's chest. The instructor looked out the window and smoked a cigar. 3 weeks passed as quickly as several days, and then the day of enlistment came. Suddenly, Professor Octo knocked on the door of Sergeant Red's office and entered. He made a remark to the instructor, "Because you can't smoke in the room." John Red asked why the man had come here, to which Octo replied that he wanted to watch the enlistment ceremony and asked him how the new recruits were. But the sergeant was not satisfied with them. He called a group of boys a bunch of cannon fodder. Octo thought it was a joke. John Red replied that everything is like that, and of all the recruits, only 2 embody hope. The first guy is Del Simon. He's narcissistic and has a terrible temper, but is at least a year ahead of the program. And the second boy is an altruist named Li Han, and he is much stronger than the others. Octo had high expectations for the brilliant graduate of the Royal Institution for the training of superhumans. After all, Del reminded the man of himself. He was also a genius and a graduate of the Royal Institution. The sergeant said that Li Han is an ideal soldier, but not a Superman, because his powers have not yet awakened, although the ARC institution only needs supermen. Octo remembered something interesting and decided to share what John Red is called behind his back. But the instructor was not surprised when he found out that he was called a rascal, because he expected that. The ceremony of admission to the first year began, and he immediately warned. Only those who are trained to use it during combat will pass. The simplest super ability was the external effect. For example, the appearance of glowing eyes. If the entrant shows such a simple skill, he will immediately be enrolled in the first year of study. The sergeant ordered to line up in 2 lines. In the first line, there will be those who have the strength, and the second line led to the agents. They will quickly deliver those who have left home. Li Han hesitated. He couldn't leave the academy so easily. He needed to come up with something. The young man remembered how Del hit our hero with a sharp pencil right in the area of the heart, and only now did the boy understand that it was so that he could focus on the power coming from his heart. Since then, he was able to feel her at least a little, but there was not even light from his eyes. The instructor approached Li Han and ordered him to go to either the first or second group, depending on which one he belonged to. The boy made it his goal to puncture the wound harder because most likely the channel is simply weakened. Seeing a pen in Sergeant Red's pocket, he quickly took it out and was hit hard in the sternum by John. Having flown several meters and narrowly avoiding the impact, the boy pulled out a pen and instantly drove it into his heart. The instructor was frightened by such actions and quickly ran up to pick up the little one. Looking at his face, John Red saw the light from Li Han's eyes. The sergeant said that he had never seen more incompetence than the boy, but nevertheless congratulated the young man on entering the educational institution. From now on, a new life path begins for Li Han. Kuro was in tears as usual and ran up to ask our hero if everything was okay with him. The little boy replied that everything was fine and the wound would heal. Octo was amazed by the young man's act, so he suddenly extended his hand to him. Something quickly caught onto the boy's hand. This thing resembled a watch. The professor added that this is not just a bracelet, it is the latest device that he has just developed. The gadget just lit up on the boy's hand and started user verification. Suddenly, the bracelet said Li Han's name and flashed a 3D model of his body. A moment later, the device announced the completion of user registration. Octo asked if the boy wanted to learn how to use it, and called. But their conversation was interrupted by the sergeant, who said that he would now divide the recruits into classes. When he says the name and rank, the entrant must join other people of the same rank. A rating system, BCD, and the class is distinguished by how the students showed themselves in the first 3 weeks, but thanks to hard work, their rank can be increased. Having finished dividing the youth, the sergeant congratulated the 25 recruits on their induction. Suddenly, he confirmed that the new recruits call him a bastard. Octo laughed at the instructor's spitefulness. John Red said that he is not just a rascal, he is the meanest and most insidious rascal they have ever met. In Class A, only 1 recruit. Oddly enough, it was Del. In Class B, there were 4 recruits, among whom was Li Han's always tearful friend. In Class C, there were 5 recruits, and in Class D, 15. In this group was Li Han himself. Although the boy was not very pleased to be in the last class, it did not matter because he still wanted to increase his rank. The sergeant chose 5 boys and ordered them to go with him, while the other 20 go with instructor Wei Chen. The second instructor looked much scarier than Sergeant Red. He was huge. Wei Chen greeted the children and introduced himself. He said that he is a weapons instructor, and although it will not be easy, he asked everyone to try in a friendly manner. The children were shocked because even though the new instructor had a frightening appearance, He was incredibly kind. The boys felt lighter. Group A and B went in one direction, and Group C and D to the gym. Lee Han saw that Kuro was in tears and cheered him up, saying that he would soon join his group. In the gym, the children watched how gracefully and skillfully the instructor handled the weapon. Wei Chen began to tell that apparently the children were surprised why they were wielding spears and swords when fighting a dragon. But the fact is that they need to have energy weapons. There is no matter in the world that could contain a mental charge of energy. And only the skin and bones of a dragon are capable of such a thing, so they will only have special weapons created from dragon parts that can harm the same dragons. Lee Han asked interestedly how the last time they defeated the dragons if they didn't have such a weapon. Wei Chen said with a sad face that back then, superhumans fought dragons hand to hand, and one dragon destroyed hundreds of such humans. Some superhumans could hit the dragon from a distance, but it is possible to finish it off only from close range. The main task was to deliver a fatal blow with the necessary weapon to release the energy. This task was performed by soldiers called strikers. After a short conversation, Wei Chen said that it was time for the children to pick a weapon for each of them. Lee Han took the spear. He shared with the instructor that he was fascinated by the whistling of the weapon during the demonstration. The instructor was happy to say that he would help in everything and tell how to properly handle a weapon. Wei Chen saw great potential in the boy. He was present when the boy attacked Sergeant Red. It was clear from him that the boy unfortunately already has experience in fights. After 2 weeks, the boys had mastered the initial techniques a bit. Lee Han stood against Jose, the two of them practicing their spear fighting skills. Our hero advised his opponent to surrender, but both of them were quite stubborn. But still, Jose surrendered after an unexpected reception from Lee Han. In 2 weeks of training, the boy became the strongest in his class. The young man thanked Jose for a good fight. They began to discuss which of them would move to Class C. Everyone was on the side of Lee Han, because they believed that he was the best fit for this place. The boy thanked him but added that it does not depend on them. Hoche pointed his finger at the others and said that they choose him unanimously. The boy was very pleased indeed to hear this, and he thanked Jose and the others. If Lee Han becomes class elder, he will be just 1 step away from promotion. The day came for the election of the headman, but Sergeant John Red wanted to see better arguments and challenged the little one to a duel. Since the instructor was told that Lee Han is the best at spearing and will go into battle with this weapon. But before that, the soldier broke off the soft part. The boy was afraid that he might injure the sergeant during the fight, but Red replied that the boy wouldn't even be able to touch him. When it was time to fight, the sergeant took off his jacket with a cigar in his mouth and threw it on the ground. Lee Han asked if Red would fight without a weapon. The instructor replied that he did not need a weapon to fight the child. Many people gathered to watch the fight. Everyone stood by the windows looking at the details, and the rest of the sergeants encouraged the little one. The guys from the last draft were surprised that Lee Han would really fight the instructor, but they thought that the boy had good training. Even Dell couldn't stand it anymore and dispersed the crowd to look out the window himself. He believed that the boy was crazy because he was going against a much stronger enemy. Lee Han began to launch a series of attacks, and Sergeant Red successfully avoided each one. The boy decided to jump up high and strike from above. But the instructor caught the guy and with all his might hit him with his knee right in the stomach. The warrior was serious and almost hit the little one again, but Lee Han quickly recovered, grabbed the spear, and successfully dodged the blow. Suddenly, the young man realized that he was not competing for the title of elder, but for his own life. The boy's face changed. He started looking at Red differently, but the instructor said that the dragon and his army don't even look at their enemies. They just kill them. Therefore, the sergeant will not give in, even if he knows that the boy is weak. The military man continued to teach the boy, saying that if the boy had met the dragon's army, then today's situation seemed insignificant to him. But Lee Han was determined to fight and asked if the instructor was going to fight or just talk. Seeing that the boy had regained consciousness a little, the sergeant ran up to deliver another blow. He took the boy and threw him on the ground. Suddenly, he felt blood on his cheek. He was surprised and wondered when exactly the young man managed to strike him. Red decided to take a closer look at the boy's movements and saw that the kid was moving so fast due to the central force of the body. It turns out that the words of the instructor Wei were true. Now the sergeant liked this guy too. Turning away from Li Han's massive blows, Red caught the rhythm and decided to counterattack. He broke the staff with his hand and grabbed the little one by the neck. The sergeant asked whether to kill the boy right now and began to clamp his hand on his throat with an appeal to surrender. The crowd was shocked by Sergeant Red's brutality, and Wei Chen ran through the boys. He didn't understand why the instructor wanted to kill the boy and said that he was fed up with ARC Company's methods. Red ordered Wei Chen to shut up, and meanwhile he was deep in thought. The young man did not give up and simply lost consciousness. The little one did not give up, so he decided to credit him with the victory and told the instructor to stop playing with the boy because this is unacceptable. Seeing the potential, the sergeant ordered to transfer the young man to Department B. The girl did not understand why this was so, and whether the higher management would agree to transfer the boy immediately from Class D to Class B. Red shared that he actually sees that Li Han is ready to be in Class A, but the small energy potential is the main obstacle. The girl answered that this is precisely the point, because the top management looks specifically at the energy potential. The instructor replied that the management does not understand anything about this, because during the battle with the dragon, they will not need magic or energy, but steel will, which will allow not only to hold the weapon, but also not to be frightened and to inflict critical damage. In this regard, Li Han has every chance to become the best striker that has ever been raised. ARC Academy will not be able to afford to lose such a talented guy, just because of the energy potential. Red continued that it could be that such a simple boy whom he singled out would save humanity. The girl had never heard such a thing from the sergeant. During the entire time, not a single word of praise was uttered in the direction of the student, and it seemed to her that the young man was making the instructor nervous. But the sergeant replied that the boy does not annoy him at all. On the contrary, he likes him. The woman in the dressing gown called Red a sadist. Li Han had been on sick leave for the 7th day. Instructor Wei quietly wanted to enter the boy's room, but the nurse asked him to wait. She opened the door and showed that the boy was practicing controlling his own strength. The instructor and the doctor both decided not to disturb the boy, so they waited in the corridor. Suddenly, they saw that he was able to concentrate his energy. Both were very happy, and the woman allowed Wei to pass. The instructor greeted the boy and asked how he was doing. Li Han replied that he felt better thanks to the instructor. Wei brought some food and said that the boy will continue his studies in Class B from tomorrow. Chan is very proud of his achievements in telekinesis, and the little one wasted no time even on sick leave. Li Han replied that he has no time to wait because he has a low energy potential. That is why the boy decided that he would improve his telekinesis skills while he was confined to bed. Wei praised the little one because having a weapon is not everything for a superhuman, because you need to have at least some level of telekinesis. The fight with the enemy depends mainly on the strength of the spirit, but when the weapon is knocked out of the hands, it must be quickly picked up with the help of telekinesis. Wei asked to leave the hospital at night. The girl released them. Li Han wondered why they came to the gym. Wei was worried about the psychic development. Judging by what he saw, the chances of awakening abilities were very small. After all, while his peers possess fire and teleportation, Khan can barely cope with telekinesis, so it is better for the boy to put all his efforts only into the development of telekinesis. This will allow him to hold his own on the battlefield. Superpower is like a muscle. The more you train it, the better you master it. And the division of recruits into ranks is nothing more than convention, because the potential of Khan's generation is incomparably strong against the potential of the old generation. The next day, when the boy was walking along the building to Class B, he was recognized by one of the senior students. Khan asked if the boy knew his name. The unknown answered that everyone knows the name of the little one. And the unknown person himself introduced himself as Dmytro Volodymyrovich Petrov. He was the head of Class B. The young man asked how to call the headman then. The boy replied that he can be called simply Dima. He hoped for friendship and cooperation. Khan arrived just in time for training, but they went to the gym. The routine of the day at the ARC institution is very oppressive with its monotony, and Khan's abilities are at a low level, and all this creates additional stress because the child is constantly afraid of being excluded from the institution, and the only place where he can release his emotions is training. As soon as the young man entered the gym, he began to compete with the boys in Class B. They were weak. But Dima liked the boy's passion, because finally he will compete and give his all. At that time, while Li Han was competing with 3 boys from Class B, Dima was competing against Kuro. The boy was in tears calling for help from his friend, because he could not compete on an equal footing against a boy stronger than himself. The kid quickly dealt with 3 enemies and ran to help his friend. Li Han told Dmitro that you can't do that and it can't be called healthy competition, but the headman replied that by saving the boy from a difficult experience, the boy is doing him a disservice. After all, the dragon and his army will not hesitate before destroying someone, so there is no place for weaklings in the ARC institution. Li Han had no words to answer Dima. He was absolutely right. But suddenly, the boy offered to show the class a real match. Dima began to launch sharp and powerful attacks at the boy, but Li Han successfully blocked them. The headman said that if you often block blows, the stick may break, but our hero had a plan which he followed. To begin with, he needed to distract the enemy and later knock him down. Finding an excellent moment, Li Han hit the weak spot on the leg, causing his opponent to fall. The boy was about to deliver an additional blow when suddenly Dima hit him directly on the head. Li Han didn't expect this because it was martial arts and not a street fight. The elder advised the little boy to observe not only weapons, but shared that he had been practicing sambo since he first learned to walk. And if the little one catches his eye, he will be boneless. Khan then asked if Dmitri would compete with the dragon in the same way using sambo. The mayor replied that if necessary, he would strangle the alien enemy even with his bare hands. His teammates encouraged Dima by calling him a Siberian tiger, although he has not associated himself with this nickname for a long time because it sounds stupid. In response to this, the crowd began to call the boy a kid because he was only 12. Li Han saw that the team was quite friendly and insulted each other, but it was all a joke. Suddenly, Dima shouted to the opponent not to look into the hall, but to continue the battle so as not to prolong the match. Melee prepared himself and threw a blow at Dmitro with all his might, but he successfully jumped away from the stick. The whole blow was aimed at the ground, and in the end, the stick broke. Li Han concluded that the elder wanted to break his staff from the start of the fight. Everyone around shouted Dima's name, and he knocked the little boy off his feet and took him by surprise, and ordered him to surrender, otherwise he would break his arm. But our hero did not want to give up, and the old man broke his arm. Dima was surprised that the little one didn't even cry. The enemy ordered to take the young man to the medical center, but suddenly, Li Han delivered a powerful blow directly to Dima's head and added that he only encountered self-pitying and whiny opponents. The elder woke up in the medical ward. Khan was lying next to him with a bandaged arm. He received a message from management. The little one lived up to all expectations, and thanks to him, the younger brothers are in perfect order, and the next time he will receive a video about them. Tears rolled down Li Han's eyes. The little ones were really fine, and even softened. After that, the boy ordered Dima to turn over the photo on his phone. He asked why he was doing this, but the young man answered that it was the old man who broke his arm. In response, Dima said that he had a crack in his head because the enemy attacked him from behind like the last coward. Li Han said that the elder himself is to blame for everything. It's called ARC, added the boy, recalling his words. The boy shared that at that moment he got really angry, although not at Dima. He also admitted that he was angry. But next time the victory will be his. Li Han said that he shouldn't have behaved like that with Kuro because he needed to lend a helping hand. Dima replied that help is of course good, but it is worth remembering that from the moment they go to the second course, they can die. The boy did not understand what the old man was talking about. Therefore, the young man decided to show everything. They came to the intensive care unit. Dima said that if the patients were breathing, they would be saved. Suddenly, doctors with a patient on a gurney ran past them. Li Han saw that the boy looked much older than them, although they were actually the same age. The headman said that when they move on to the next course, they will be injected with special drugs. Thanks to them, seniors grow very quickly and their bodies look like adults. Dima explained that there is no time to wait because already in the third year they will compete with dragons, and no one will wait for them to grow up in the usual way. Li Han agreed with this because he always had to oppose those who were older than him. When he stole an adult's bag, he was quickly caught and given a strong beating, and if the little one managed to escape, the thing he had just obtained was taken away by older boys who were also orphans. He doesn't need a happy childhood, he needs to survive. It was the most important thing for him. Dima said that the young man is the most mature among the recruits in the ARC. Li Han said that he understood everything and said that they can go back. Sergeant Red said that today there will be air training. Everything must be done as they were taught, and departure will be at 6:30 minutes. Everyone needs to prepare things in advance. Dimitro asked if Khan missed the ward in which they rested, because as soon as they left the hospital, air training immediately began. Suddenly, our hero finds a lot of food in the middle. It turns out that this will not be a simple training. The headman agreed, but they saw that some had already started eating their food. The guys were annoyed by this approach to training because it was not smart. Dima drew attention to the gifted long-haired boy and called him the last genius of England. The old man desperately wanted to fight the young man, but Li Han said that this is aerial training and not a battlefield. Meanwhile, Dell didn't understand why Group B was looking at him so strangely. Instructor Red yelled for the boys to stop looking in their backpacks and immediately go aboard the rotorcraft. The guys quickly put on their helmets and went to the cargo helicopters. A team of first-year students went to a deserted island. The first and most important task on it was to survive, and the food and things in the backpacks should be enough for 2 days, after which the children will independently solve the problem of food. The boys talked among themselves. They didn't like it all, although Li Han liked it, because it all reminded him of a summer camp he had never been to. The boys were happy because the task was to survive for 2 days, and they had food supplies. But suddenly the instructor added that they would be picked up only in a week. Therefore, students must try not to die. Kuro began to cry, and the other boys were very surprised by such news. Instructor Red caught those students who immediately surrendered and asked if the recruits were evenly distributed across the island. The colleague replied that it was like that from the beginning, but then the 7 joined a group. John Red said that these newcomers are not so innocent, just like adults. If they are left unchecked, they will immediately begin to solve everything by force, and instead of acting together to survive, they will rob each other. A group of thugs took a package of food from another boy, led by Dell, and ordered not to touch the food. And they do all this in order to have privileges over others. Meanwhile, Kuro is stuck in a tree. This time, he needed Li Han's help more than ever. The little one was in tears, crying out for help as loudly as possible. Dell heard Kuro's screams and told the boys that they had found their next victim. Li Han had just reached the shore. The road in the water was difficult, but he did it. After inspecting the area, the boy found a place that would suit him well in order to set up camp. All that remained was to find shelter. For someone who has lived in hunger all his life, provisions for 2 days should be enough for a week or even more. The boy understood that in such a situation, many people would take food from the weaker ones. He wondered if Simon and his ilk had already started doing this. Dell approached the bushes and saw Dimitro. The B-class elder was obsessed with the idea of fighting the boy. Therefore, he immediately shouted the name of the gifted boy and challenged him to a duel. But the long-haired boy refused him because he did not want to waste his energy and get his hands dirty. Finding Kuro, a group of rascals laughed at him. Having taken a backpack with provisions from him, the boys left the poor man hanging like that. Plax asked to leave him at least a little food, but the leader said that the boy was very lucky, because if he had been on his own too, he would have been well beaten, so let him hang on the tree and wait for the instructors. Adding that the boy will not die of hunger in a week. The robbers went away, adding that if it rains, the little one will not die of thirst either. But Kuro began to cry a lot and asked what bad he had done to them. Dell told the baby to stop crying because he hated hearing people cry. The boy began to cry even harder. He almost lost consciousness because he sobbed so hard that he forgot to breathe. Suddenly, it seemed to the crybaby that Li Han was standing in front of him. He said his name but thought that it was just a ghost created by his brain. But it really was him. The boy saved his eternally crying friend and set up camp, while Kuro was unconscious because he was terribly nervous hanging from the tree. Kuro woke up and looked out of the tent. He was very happy to see Lee Han. The young man had just prepared a crying breakfast. Since he did not find the victim's backpack, he gave half of his breakfast to the boy. Kuro hated being a heavy burden, but for all the time he was hanging on the tree, he was very hungry, so he did not refuse breakfast. He thanked his savior terribly, thinking about what a burden he had become for him. Sergeant John Red smoked in his office and watched the boys through the drones. Octo entered the room and said that smoking is not allowed in the room, but the instructor aggressively replied that he should shut his mouth. Octo asked if the colleague found someone interesting. John pointed to a red-haired guy from Norway. His name is Knud Meyer. He made himself a raft and is returning to ARC because the main goal was to survive and not stay on the island. Kuro and Lee Han found the source, and the water bottles were equipped with a special filter that allowed them to safely drink the water without the risk of contamination. The boy gave water to the crybaby and told him to drink to his heart's content, and they would go on. The boy completely restored his water balance, but he was still tormented by hunger. They need to find food for two, otherwise they will not last. You need to see what is edible on the island, although you can't even see coconuts on the palm trees, which means that everyone will start looting. Suddenly, Kuro grabbed his friend and pulled him back, and in front of Lee Han, a trap was triggered in which he almost fell into. He wondered how the boy was able to see her. Plaxa began to tell that everything was spinning in his head, and he seemed to see a picture of a friend falling into a trap. Lee Han said that it's cool because it can be the awakening of the next power, and most likely it's a prediction skill, that's why it's cool. The young man also saw that experiences and sharp turns of events awakened new skills in the boy, which means that the task will help in the development of all his skills. The leader with the Razby Shacks found a camp that the boys had broken up. They will be waiting for them to visit and rob later when they are resting. Kuro constantly wanted to lie down. It was obvious that the boy was exhausted. Suddenly, Lee Han saw that someone was near their tent and left a stone as a mark at the entrance. They needed to pack up the tent immediately and move on because it was easy for a large number of people to rob the boys. The boys had a task. It was necessary to find a place to park while it was still light. The young man asked if he saw anything near Kuro, but the boy's eyes rolled. Suddenly, he threw a stick at Lee Han, and a moment later, a black panther pounced on the place where the boy was standing. Our hero could not reach the spear to defend himself. They were in a disadvantageous position. Then the panther caught fire. Jose set it on fire and asked if everything was okay with the boys. Although he himself had a twisted leg, Lee Han asked what happened to the savior that his leg was twisted. Jose replied that some fools had set a trap and he fell into it. The young man replied that most likely the same boys came to their tent as well. The wounded boy knew that everyone would start robbing each other, but he didn't even have food and nothing to take. The boys asked how it happened. Jose said that as soon as he got into the trap, he immediately ate everything. The boys were shocked by the young man's stupidity, but there was nothing you could do and you had to find shelter. Meanwhile, Carl was awake. He remembered how his father told him that a detector had been activated at the airport and that he had the ability to telepathy and that the boy was most likely a superhuman. This is a chance for the boy to enter the ARC Academy, but he didn't want to because he was busy filming a movie. To this, his father said that the young man would leave this clowning and become a real hero. After all, telepaths will enter the history of the country when the war ends. And the boy will have the opportunity to become the one who leads the whole nation. B-class Elder was dutifully doing push-ups, but Dell wondered why the young man was doing this, since there was no more food. Dima replied that he is an athlete, and to be a skilled fighter he needs to train constantly. The boy called the old man an idiot, because telepaths don't fight with their fists. The young man grabbed his head and said that he already misses Lee Han, because besides the jerk, there is no one to practice his fighting skills with. The long-haired boy reacted to Dimitro's words as he had intended. Thanks to Lee Han, the Elder can finally compete with Dell and test himself against a much stronger enemy. In the meantime, the boys woke up. They decided to split up, and Lee Han with Kuro will go in search of firewood and food, while Jose will stand on the defense of their shelter because his leg still hurts. The boy apologized and agreed to sit in the shelter. But Khan said that thanks to pyrogenesis, they have every chance to survive this training. The boys approached the lake. There were fish swimming there. They should be enough for today. Plaxa asked how to catch fish, because he had never done it before. Suddenly, Li Han thanked his friend, because he saved him yesterday and also found shelter. Previously, the boy always wanted to take care of Kuro, but from one moment, he realized that he would not always be able to do this. Therefore, he did not know how to be and what to do. But during several days on this island, he saw that Kuro is a genius of telepathy, and he has the power to protect them all. Therefore, from today, the boys will help each other because they are friends. The boy was surprised by this. In Japan, the little boy was called a crybaby, a worthless fool and garbage. No one treated him well, and he was given the name Kuro, which translates from Japanese as a boy with dark skin. And now, he has a person he can trust. Eli Han added that it was a little cooler than he thought. Meanwhile, Kuro used his ability to see where the fish would move. The boy saw that Kuro had incredible powers, and thanks to him, they would catch a lot of fish to curb hunger. Suddenly, with the help of telepathy, the boy began to pull out fish one by one. Today was the third day of survival. The boys left satisfied because they caught as many as 8 fish. This will be for all of them, Li Han praised his friend, because he did most of the work. Kuro replied that most likely he just became more experienced and added that Jose would definitely like the dish, because every day he cooks fish better and better thanks to his fiery power. Suddenly, Li Han felt something was wrong. So he ran to the storeroom to see what happened. There he saw Jose lying there. Their equipment and even the spear were taken away by the thieves. The boy's surprise knew no bounds. Meanwhile, Dell and his opponent spoke before their competition against each other. Dimitro shared that he wants to learn how to fight with 2 swords in his hands because it looks cool. But he wondered why the boy agreed to the fight at all. Dell replied that if he and Li Han really fought, then Dima is most likely a Class B elder. Also, the young man heard that they want to transfer him to Class A. This is just a great opportunity to check whether the management was in a hurry. The boys started a battle against each other. They sharply hit each other, but suddenly, Dell touched the opponent's chest with a training sword, although he understood that this was not the end. Dima swung his sword hard, and the long-haired boy jumped back. The opponent's retreat was even a better opportunity for the old man to strike, so the young man began to deliver a series of quick blows. Dell fought strategically. He was focused on the enemy's movements and calculated the opportune moment. A moment later, the young man hit Dimitri directly in the head. The young man understood that he needed to be more focused. The blonde struck a blow that should have aimed directly at the throat, but Dima skillfully turned away and knocked the sword out of the opponent's hands. The boy shouted that it was all over and wanted to deliver the final blow. Suddenly, Dell, using telepathy, hit the boy in the back with a sword, which meant the complete defeat of the old man. The young man said that the guy would win in a fist fight, but don't forget that they are telepaths. Li Han was very scared. He started shouting at Jose and asked him to wake up. Later, the boy came to his senses and asked him to speak a little more quietly. The boys asked their friend who had stuffed him like that. He replied that it was Karl Heinz. He had a team of 7 people, and they took all the food supplies they had. They may come again, so the boys need to find a more secure place. But Li Han replied that they would not go anywhere because he would not tolerate such a thing. You can't make fun of his friends with various bastards. However, they will look for a new place to give the enemy an opportunity to settle in their previous hiding place. The boys will prepare well so that at sunset they will catch the bandits by surprise and be able to skillfully attack everyone. IR friends and expected, the bandits again visited their cave to place their camp in it. Li Han asked to tell Kuro when he would be ready to attack. The little boy concentrated. He understood that he would not have coped with the bandits alone, and Li Han was the only one who believed in him. He made a promise that he would not let his friend down. Kuro picked up many rocks using telepathy and started sending them straight at the enemy. Thanks to the attack, one of the bandits was knocked down. He screamed in pain. The bandits noticed where the boys were sitting and started running towards them while trying to avoid the stone. But the boy saw exactly where the thieves would turn, so he immediately directed the stones at them with excellent accuracy. It was dark in the yard, They could not see anything, but suddenly, Li Han began to deliver strong blows directly to the head of his opponents. Carl was sure that the boy could not stand alone against 6 enemies. Most likely he was not alone. The boy asked with whom the little one came. Han asked Kuro to come out from behind the bushes and said that he would deal with the fool one-on-one. Carl is shocked because 2 small boys have taken apart the whole group of his boys. Even a crybaby took part in it. Li Han said that they came to avenge Jose, but the thief was wrong if he thought he could get away with it. The bandit took the stick in his hands and said that this time the little one would be lucky. The young man told the enemy to stop talking and start acting. A fight broke out between them. Carl decided to mindlessly attack the boy by simply swinging a stick at him. The little one saw this movement and managed to react quickly, and not only turned away from the blow, but also counterattacked, getting right in the face of the enemy. After getting hit directly in the face, Carl cursed and again without thinking threw another blow. He missed again, and again missed a blow directly to the stomach. Li Han asked if it was hard for the boy and added that this was only the beginning of his torture. Carl yelled at the boy not to show off and tried to deliver an unexpected blow, but Khan struck faster, hitting directly on the jaw and knocking the opponent off his feet. The self-confident boy could not believe that he was defeated by 2 10-year-old boys at the head of the gang. The boy wondered why the bullies were beating Jose so hard, since he couldn't fight back anyway. Carl did not want Li Han to look down on him because he is a famous actor in Germany, and his father achieved great success in politics thanks to his popularity. The boy was guided by only one goal imposed on him by his father, namely to become a telepath and conquer the whole country with his status. He didn't want to let the little one ruin everything. Carl acted meanly and threw sand right into Khan's eyes. Blinding the enemy, he began to beat the boy. Kuro wanted to run up and help, but the German ordered him to stay where he was. Carl wanted to continue beating Khan, but he was disturbed by crying. The boy took himself in his hands and with the help of telekinesis directed the stones in the direction of the aggressor. The long-haired boy switched to Kuro. He began to call the little one useless and did not understand why such a worthless person was forgotten in the ARC institution. Carl was about to strike when he suddenly saw Khan from behind. A moment later, the boy punched his opponent in the face with all his might. The boy asked what the benefit of the actor was, because all he did was find a posse pack and hide behind their backs. Andel, Simon, Dimitri, or Jose, any of them is much more useful than Carl. Li Han added that there are too many problems waiting for Carl to break out on the mountain in the way he chose. And if he does not change his methods, he will be defeated. The boy drove his spear straight into the ground, and a centimeter to the left was the enemy's head. Touches his friends again. Then he may not expect pardon for the first time. Carl laughed. He never wanted to be a telepath. The boy said these words about himself and later left the ARC institution of his own accord. The next 3 days on the uninhabited island flew by in an instant. The boys had a good time, and thanks to their joint work, they stayed full and warm. Finally, the helicopters arrived. The boys experienced many problems and learned new things, although they would not like to repeat this experience again. The boys huddled together, waiting for the rotorcraft. The crowd praising Kuro, Jose, and Li Han for helping them a lot with the food supplies and stopping the group of raiders. The gadgets of each of the young men received a notification that they had shown good results this week. They were ordered to go to the helicopters in the order in which they would be called. Li Han was surprised that they would be separated. Sergeant Red said that the instructors were constantly watching all the participants during the training, and they made a unanimous decision that Li Han, Kuro, Dimitro, and Del will be left in training. He added that it was not just survival training, and the test to find the savior of humanity. The instructor informed the boys that they would move on to the next course. Finally, after hard weekdays at the ARC institution, the day off came. Jose invited Han to play football because it is not often that you can afford such an activity. The boys agreed that they would not use their abilities and would play fair. Pupils are allowed to rest only in special cases. This day, a special occasion was a meeting of instructors, where the transfer of the boys to the next course will be discussed. Alexander Lekor, Chief of Staff of the ARC, started the meeting. Sasha Grace asked to tell about the 4 boys. The chief said that both of them can be transferred without problems, namely Della and Dimitro. But Li Han had a low level of ability from the very beginning, and has remained so until now. The management had a question as to why the boy should be transferred to the next course. Instructor Wei Chan began to explain that not only did Li Han have excellent hand-to-hand combat skills, but he also had an ample supply of patience and willpower, all qualities necessary for a fighter. Red remembered his fight with Khan. The kid had huge potential in telekinesis, and his ability to concentrate is simply amazing. The kid threw a punch, and the kid used telekinesis along with the spin power. It is amazing that the boy did all this on his own and no one taught him this. Meanwhile, the boys played football, our hero scored a goal and brought a point to the team. Management decided to go to the last of the young men. Kuro was the weakest mentally. After the boys are transferred to the next course, their bodies will be modified, and the main factor will be mental strength. Sasha asked if Red just wanted to kill the boy. But the instructor replied that the telekinetic abilities of the little one are at the highest level and much stronger than those of famous talents. Also, the boy recently developed another ability that allows him to look into the future a few seconds ahead. Alexander answered that the question is not in strength, but in endurance. John Red said that this is exactly why the boys should be transferred together, because Lee Han has a great influence on Kuro's powers and plays the role of an older brother. Alexander noticed how the instructors Wei Chan and Red wanted to transfer Han to the next course. The boys were just finishing the game and Lee Han scored the decisive goal, earning the victory for his team. The boys had a good time and were happy. Instructor Red interrupted the boys' fun and said that later the boys would receive news about the final decision of the board of instructors. But he decided to tell Khan and his friends right away that their transfer to the next course had been approved. Jose congratulated Lee Han and added that the time has come. The boy replied that it was most likely the case, and said that they would meet again. The instructor got tired of watching all this, so he ordered everyone to go to their rooms. And for 4 boys to collect things and prepare, Li Han sincerely thanked Instructor Red, because thanks to him, the boy was transferred from Class D to Class B, and today, in general, the transition to the next course. John Red replied that he was not sure if this was due to his merits, but added that there was no turning back. And if the little one finishes the second year without problems, they will meet again. The sergeant wished the little one to survive and lit a cigar while the little one saluted him. The boys packed their things and they needed to go to the second medical building. Kuro was terribly worried, but Lee Han assured that he would be there and the little one had nothing to worry about. At that time, Dmytro was terribly looking forward to the operation and was incredibly pleased because the boys would become even stronger. Sasha greeted the boys. She is the head of the medical building at number 2 and informed the boys that she would be watching over them for 5 weeks. The boys' bodies will develop for exactly 5 weeks, 2 of which they will spend in the incubator. And the next 3 weeks are set aside for rehabilitation. Khan said goodbye to his friends and said that they would meet in 2 weeks. Sasha Grace saw Lee Han's interesting behavior and understood that Sergeant Red was not just praising the little one. The boys were placed in a capsule, wearing air supply masks, and the tank began to be filled with a special liquid with nutrients. They felt strange, but it was difficult for them to breathe. But Lee Han looked calm. Sasha told the boys that claustrophobia is a necessary problem that all soldiers must overcome. They should not worry because soon they will fall asleep. The boys fell asleep. There were no complications, which means that the operation can be started, but one of the boys may have a hard time undergoing surgery. The assistant suggested that the Dr. Grace go to rest, because the woman has been suffering a lot lately. In the building, she saw Sergeant Red with a cigar in his mouth. Sasha asked the instructor why he visits the hospital if he doesn't care about the students. He replied that it would be a pity if such talented and truly valuable personnel died because of the doctor. Sasha assured that everything will be in perfect order. At the moment, the second phase of the introduction of the nutrient solution is just passing. In this liquid, the power of telekinesis of the dragon is created. In other words, a high-density liquid mixed with the dragon's heart is injected. Red answered that the boys will grow up based on this skill. But suddenly, an alarming notification came on the doctor's gadget, and she immediately visited the ward with incubators. Lee Han began to wake up. Sasha wanted to immediately stop the operation, but Sergeant Red stopped her and said that the boy must transfer to the second course under any condition. Everything went well. Sasha spoke with Lee Han. He thanked him for the operation. The doctor replied that this was the first incident in history. The telepath repelled the introduction of the dragon's heart. The sergeant ordered to skip the stage of feeding the dragon's heart and proceed with the following procedures. The boy will be registered as a case of strengthening only physical qualities. The woman asked if everything is okay with the boy and if he does not feel any organic rejection. The young man replied that everything is fine with him. He joked that now he won't be expelled at least because of his grades. Sasha was shocked by the boy's psychological balance. Stamina and telepathy are directly dependent on each other. But the woman wondered why the guy's psychic abilities are weak, but the strength of the spirit is great. Rejection was somehow connected with all this. Meanwhile, Dima met Khan and said that from today, they are considered sophomores. 5 weeks flew by unnoticed. Li-Han noticed that everyone had changed a lot, especially Kuro. The young man added that he was glad that everyone was alive and well, and that the procedure went without any problems. Dell did not like the boy's mood because this is a normal procedure for them, so Li-Han should not turn his nose up, even though he is special among them. The study of the second course did not differ from the first, except that they already studied in groups. Each group consists of 4 to 12 people. Li-Han could not believe that he will have his own room. He will study with Kuro and 7 other boys. Kato greeted him. He is the head of the group. Although there are many disciplines in the second year, focus on 3 main ones, namely fire training, aerial training, and simulated competition. Modern weapons are effective enough when fighting monsters, said the boy. Among the low-intelligence monsters known to them were ogres, grants, and werewolves. But their commander named Ella has a well-developed intellect and uses telekinesis at the level of fighters. Firearms are powerless against her telekinesis. However, her powers are not eternal, and when the skill ends, there is little left of her. Fire training is essential, but dogfights and simulated combat are much more important because that's where the groups are competing against each other. Simulated competition is a training session held on an artificially created arena at the ARC facility. The main goal of the training is to capture the flag located at the enemy's base. Only individual skills and strategy decide here. But even without the use of metal weapons, this training is very dangerous because lethal damage can be inflicted with a club. Air combat takes place on airboards, but supporters must always be in the rear. They control most of the aero boards. They either help move them or, in extreme cases, strike at the crew members of the enemy team. Until recently, there were no strong telepaths in their group, but with the appearance of Kuro, they have nothing to fear. The boys asked if Kuro would help in the game with his telepathic skills. The young man hesitated in the answer. Then the healthy guy started to press him, but Li-Han decided to defuse the situation, saying that his friend will help, but there is no need to put so much pressure on him. Zordalo began to shout at the boy, but Kato calmed the boy down and said that somehow Khan was right, because they had only been here for the first day. The leader asked them to behave more quietly because although the young man is in the same group with them, he is much weaker. And they took him only through Kuro. Kato added that Li-Han has the lowest level of telekinesis, so he is not expected to be of much use. The team mocked him and told him not to get confused under his feet. The boy clenched his teeth and suddenly answered with a smile that he understood his main task, not to interfere underfoot with the teams, and extended his hand to shake her. Kato agreed, and they shook hands. The boss wondered whether the boy would last long in their team. Morning training began at the training ground. The boys learned to use weapons. The head watched and encouraged everyone. Kuro was not very good with weapons and looked confused. Li-Han was put on the bench and he will not play in the aerial battle, but will only observe. During the simulated competition, as few people as possible should be involved. In their team, there are still enough masters of hand-to-hand combat, so he will not take part in this either. The head told Khan that the competition would be watched by the second year and he could watch it with them. The capture of the flag began, the team in which Dell was moving just forward because they were led by a genius of telekinesis. The boy confirmed his words and said that they would easily take the flag. The boys from the blue team instantly lost their weapons. She was taken by Dell with the help of his powers. After that, the boy gave the order to attack the enemy. The red team quickly broke through and took the flag with ease. Kato said that the role of a telepath in such competitions is extremely important, so if Kuro is on their team, they will be able to win. Li-Han decided to add that the 9th group did not take into account the terrain and did not think about tactics at all. Therefore, it is necessary to take into account only the strength and skills of fighters. The guy wanted to continue something and suddenly stopped. Kato said that Khan could continue, but added that the boy probably wanted to say that if he were in the head's place, he would have acted differently. Our hero understood why the head disliked him so much. Zdrovan called Li-Han to talk. He said that the young man is a really good fighter, but he is not at all suitable for the 7th group because he does not fit into the team. The guy asked why he didn't fit into the team. Zdrovan directly replied that the young man dares to interrupt Kato. But he added that in some situations, in his opinion, Lee Han would have acted better. Unfortunately, there is only one place for the head in the group. If the guy pressed a little more, the team would split. Kato is the head, which means that Khan cannot contradict him. When the groups are redistributed, the young man must transfer to another group. The young man did so and wrote an application for transfer to another group. Instructor Wei asked if this was the final decision, and Li Han replied that he was sure of it. Wei Chan replied that if such a decision is final, the issue will be resolved at the instructor's council, so there will be news after it. The guy is glad that the decision will be made later because he can focus on personal training instead of group training. And during this time, he can see which group he will be transferred to. Kuro came to ask Han about what he was talking about with the deputy head. The guy replied that there was nothing important in the conversation. The young man asked his friend how the training was going. The guy said that he can control 3 airboards at once with people on them. The game began. All the spectators were interested to see what Kuro was capable of. Li Han, meanwhile, was rooting for his friend. The teams took to the field, and the main goal of the battle was to learn how to control airboards. Dragons mainly compete in the air, so the military is equipped with a jetpack, a hook cable, and an airboard. Airboard is an electric robot board. In the military version, it can be equipped with firearms. In an aerial competition, one person can work together with 2 airboards. That is, one board is used for movement and support, and the other for attack. Supports are an integral part of the aircrew. They control the airboards and greatly facilitate the work of their partners, allowing them to fully focus on the battle. The battle had just begun when Team Number 7 already shot down 2 guys from the enemy crew. Everything looked as if the blue team knew in advance where the enemies would move. Kato's plan had every chance of success, at least in theory. Kuro will control the airboard of the commander and his deputy. There were only 2 players left in the red team. They understood that they had to get rid of the support, otherwise they would not win. Zdravanya was grabbed by the head with the deputy, but the second player of the red team headed straight for Kuro. The blue player decided to chase after him, but Kato ordered to be near him. During that time, red reached Kuro and disabled it. Thus, the commander and his deputy were eliminated. Li Han understood the leader's mistake. He relied only on Kuro's telekinesis, and the whole strategy was built around support. The audience in the hall was delighted. Although the boy was eliminated, he showed an excellent result, but due to extremely high tension, he made a mistake. If Kato had accepted Han into the team, this would not have happened. Wei Chang summoned Li Han. His application for the title of the new head of the group was approved. After all, due to the fact that the young man showed himself excellently as a commander in the first year, the instructors decided to give him a chance. To become the head of a new group, a boy needs to find 3 more people, and from other groups it is allowed to take only 1 boy each. Khan understood that because of his actions, he would become an enemy of all the leaders of the groups. And he needs to prepare so as not to lose the most talented guys. He wanted to invite Jose and Kuro, but unfortunately one of them was not transferred to the next course, so he decided to talk to the other. Suddenly he remembered that Dmitro was still there. He quickly ran to him with an offer to join a new group. But the young man replied that if he left his group, it would be considered treason. He is already the head of the 5th group, so he cannot leave them at all. Khan understood what was the matter, and they agreed that during the competition, they would give their best against each other. All the heads began to follow Khan. Suddenly, Kato rebuked the boy and said that they would not let Kuro go. Li Khan replied that under bad management, the telepath would not show his talent well and would not reveal his talent. Kato walked up to Han and grabbed his shirt. He said that he would not give the boy away for anything. And when he saw the telepath himself, he threatened him with death if the boy wanted to leave. The guy mocked his opponent because he talked so much and couldn't do anything. Kato hit the boy and the young man did not fight because he did not want to get his hands dirty. There was no way back. The boy understood that if he did not gather the group, he would pay dearly for it. Suddenly, the young man saw a student who was dressed differently than the others. He wanted to talk to him, but he was called to hospital building number 2. Sasha said that new boys have arrived who have transferred to the 2nd year, so each of the chapters should introduce themselves and offer their team to the boys. Li Han came out and introduced himself. He said that he just doesn't have enough people in the group. The others mocked him because he was alone. Suddenly, Jose raised his hand and said he wanted to enter. Khan thanked his friend for joining his group, but they still lacked people. Jose added that the others who didn't join the boys' group are just idiots, and don't know what the young man is capable of. Otherwise, they would have stood in line. The boys were about to leave, but suddenly Kuro came to them. The previous team gave him a good beating for walking away, but still, the boy escaped. Then another guy came. He greeted the guys in a strange manner and called himself Knutmeyer, and asked if he could join the guys in the team. Khan replied that it is possible, but everyone has a negative attitude towards their group, and if they are disbanded, the consequences are clear. The 13th group was formed and stood in front of the second-year senior instructor, who introduced himself as Grossman. Li Han also introduced himself as the commander of the 13th group and named the privates. The instructor noticed that Kuro's face was bruised and asked what happened to him. The boy replied that he simply slipped on the ladder and fell. Grossman smiled and advised the boy not to fall again. The 13th group was given extra time because they were just formed, so they have extra time, namely 3 weeks before they start participating in the competition. The boys made it to their first competition. During the shooting, Knut was nervous and said that he could not shoot at all, and could he just go to the bench in case of defeat. But Khan reassured the boy and said that he would not allow the death of any of his boys. The commander ordered the mobile bunker to act according to the plan. He asked the guys not to laugh too much because he came up with the name a second ago. The boys of the 13th and 9th groups were serious, so they gave their all. Many cheered for the 9th group. Meanwhile, Dell wondered how Li Han would act. The team of the 9th group did not see the boys and moved on. Knut caught them and reported about it. The boys did not expect that the enemies would be so fast, although they did not have time to regroup. At least they had time to prepare. Suddenly, Knut was hit in the leg. He became very confused and started shooting in all directions with the thought that he would shoot at least someone. Later, the boy realized that he could join his group because his leg injury was not critical for him. The blue team got enough time to prepare and start to act. Most likely the 9th group will be waiting for them. The whip was still caught and he was eliminated. Now they only have a shield made of wood. Suddenly, the boys using the tree as a telekinetic shield began to advance directly on the 9th team. They did not have boys with such abilities, so they had nothing to answer. Li Han was well aware of his team's weaknesses, and thanks to the wooden shield, they would once again be able to win in those situations. Jose set fire to the 9th squad's hideout, and they began to suffocate from the smoke. The red team completely lost visibility, and when they tried to leave the hiding place, 2 people were eliminated. Kato thought that his opponents couldn't see anything through the smoke and were sitting there. But suddenly, they were also eliminated because Kuro can see perfectly thanks to his telekinetic powers. The hall was delighted. Everyone praised the work of the 13th group. The boys were celebrating their first victory, and Jose offered the head to say a few words. Li Han began his speech. He told that although he knew about the aggressiveness of the tactics, they won only because they acted together. Kuro added that the plan was not aggressive but incredibly cool. The head replied that it was clear how the group of 9 would act before it was known who would take which position. Knut added that this is what impresses him, how the commander perfectly reads the next actions of the enemy. He is glad that he chose exactly the 13th group. Suddenly, the young man felt sick, and Khan suggested that the boy lie down. The young man refused because he could not miss such a meal even in death. The senior instructor planned something bad. The 13th group completely destroyed the 9th, although she is one of the strongest. He has to crush the boys before they come up with too much. He selected groups that can be put against the 13th. The 7th group fell under his choice, although he hesitated because he was worried about whether the group he had chosen would lose. But he decided to do everything in his power to make Li Han's group lose. Therefore, he immediately put them against the first squad. Previously, insomnia tormented the boy because of the fear of being expelled from the ARC institution, but now he has the best teammates, and he has nothing to fear. The red team has already thought out their tactics. They understood very well that in the 13th group, Jose and Kuro are some of the strongest boys from the entire second year. The main task is to defeat the fighter with the bandage. There was a real monster in the red team. He could hardly be defeated by 2 or even 3 guys at a time. He was chosen as the captain because the rest of the group will be able to hold back long-range attacks and destroy the enemy. Dmitri wondered what Li Han would do, but Dell told him to shut up. Suddenly, the first team saw a bandage on Kuro's head. The boys were surprised by this. The young man was worried, but Knut and Jose asked him to concentrate and reassured him, saying that they would protect him. The red team was confident of its victory, and one player hiding in the bushes will not interfere with them. Li Han understood that in the battle of the captains, it is not necessary to kill the entire team. You can simply defeat the captain with the bandage. The red team has almost reached the necessary position for the blue attack. Han asked Kuro to get ready because now it would be the boys' turn. Han jumped down while Kuro felled a tree and made a trap. In one moment, the red armband was in the hands of the commander of the 13th Squad. Their victory was announced. The entire auditorium was just buzzing with delight. They were shocked by Li Han's actions. He jumped from a tree that was at least 5 stories high. Everyone thought the commander of the 13th Squad was incredibly cool. This situation seemed funny to Dimitro, because a couple of minutes ago the whole hall was showering the guys with shit, and now they are rejoicing for their victory. The people were talking among themselves. Everyone was wondering why they had not seen the boy on the battlefield before. Suddenly, someone said that he was part of the 7th Squad, but he was never put on the field. The crowd did not understand why the 7th Squad decided not to use such a strong fighter. But the day before that, Kuro and Han trained a lot because controlling a person in flight is incredibly difficult, and the boy risked his own life. However, Khan broke his arm from the fall. Kuro began to apologize profusely, but the commander replied that there was no need to do this because the mission was difficult, and the boy did a great job anyway. Knuth added that the boy has nothing to blame because without him, they would not have been able to win at all. Jose thought that there would be no training until Li Han's hand healed. But suddenly a notification came on the boys' gadgets, saying that in 2 days they would compete against the 7th Squad. The guys were angry with the command because you can't place their group when one of the soldiers has a broken arm, which is an automatic loss for the team. Meanwhile, Kato Suoki walked in to see the senior instructor. He said that the 7th group has every chance to win and asked if the boy is sure of his team's victory. The commander of the 7th Squad replied that even if Li Han's arm had not been broken, they would still have won. The instructor ordered the boy to do everything in order to win. The head of the 3rd group reassured the boys and added that all they need to do is win. But the young man has no strategy or clear plan. He promised that he would think of a way for them to win. Kato just heard the boys' words and asked if they would be useless. Li Han replied that even with a broken arm, he would kick the 7th group's ass. Kato said that it will not be so easy to do because they will be competing in an aerial battle. The young man promised to prepare something special for the competitors. They will be disgraced if they do not do something special. The head of the 7th Squad said that he would kill both Han and Kuro. The boy replied that Kato had never killed anyone in his life, so he shouldn't talk like that. The boys went to the gym to train. It was problematic for Kuro to control 2 airboards with healthy hands, and with a broken hand he can barely manage one. This is also a problem for Jose. It is difficult for the young man to control 2 boards and use fire at the same time. The team can only count on Kuro, and so did the 7th group. But the boy did not want to overload his friend. Even without strong support, the 7th group is well balanced in terms of physical strength and telekinesis, and with Kato as the leader, all the teamwork makes the team much stronger. The boys will not be able to win by attacking directly. Jose showed a new problem. There was little sense of fire in the air. Taking into account the speed of the airboard, it will be very difficult to aim. Meanwhile, Kato and his deputy were spying on Team 13. They did not see them as competitors and reasons to lose. The day of the battle has come. The crowd is surprised why the 13th group is fighting again. After all, Li Han has a broken arm. The 13th team had no chance of victory, so the crowd thought. People thought that Instructor Grossman was just a freak. 2 opposing teams met each other, each commander raising the spirits of his men. The command to launch the airboards sounded, but later the 7th group saw how many boards the 13th team had put up. There were 16 airboards on the field. This shocked both the spectators and the competitors of the Blues. It seemed impossible, because the guys studying in the 2nd year can manage only 2 boards and supports 4. Some can't even handle 2. But here there are as many as 16 on the field. Kato is shocked. Wei added that Kuro can't control 10 boards. Li Han saw that the enemy commander did not understand how it happened and told the young man that they would soon understand everything. Through hard training without rest, Khan learned to concentrate his energy, and while they were preparing in the gym, the guys came to a conclusion. Jose can set fire not to the terrain, but to the airboards themselves. Meanwhile, Khan will launch them as charges at opponents. The first airboard flew straight into the red team and blew up. All the spectators were amazed. They did not know the price of one such board, but what they saw pleased them, and they wanted more. Kato ordered the substitute to block the attacks, or the opponents would blow up their boards as well. But they could not get close because they could be hit by an explosion. The chief instructor ran up and ordered to stop all this. In Grossman's office, the boy sat in silence for 10 minutes. Finally, the instructor began to scold the boy because the price of one such board is huge. And if he had not been a member of the ARC institution, he would have remained guilty before the company for the rest of his life. Li Han thought he had been summoned to discuss strategy. The instructor replied that technically the boy did not break the rules, and some of the instructors would even praise for such a way out of the situation. But the next time he is obliged to warn in advance if he plans something like this. Suddenly the young man asked to ask a question. The instructor allowed. Li Han asked if they were competing against dragons. Would the question of the cost of airboards then arise? The young man added that they must win at any cost and asked if this was not the main goal of training. Grossman laughed and replied that the boy caught him and that he reminded him of an acquaintance. He added that he would gladly watch him on the battlefield in order to leave his office. Kato met with Li Han. The commander of the Seven said that even though the young man won thanks to his worthless strategy, no one would praise him for it. The commander of the 13th asked if it was for the sake of saying these words that Kato was standing under the door and waiting for the boy. The young man wrung out and answered that he was just passing by. Li Han went on, and his competitor shouted after him that he would kill him and that he would not dare to lose to anyone until this moment. The boys were incredibly pleased. Jose was afraid that they would be disqualified for breaking the rules, but Knut replied that in fact they had not broken anything. As always, during the festive meal, the guys received a notification on their gadgets again. They are assigned a battle against the 5th squad. Putting the same group to fight over and over again was in Grossman's style, Han said. Dmytro was just taking an evening run when he suddenly came across the previous chapter of the 5th group. He was not himself. The boy challenged him to a battle so that after it he would learn all the details. Li Han was competing against a boy he didn't know. He was incredibly fast and wielded 2 swords. After that, Grossman called the young man to him. He informed that Dmytro was seriously injured and would not be able to participate in the competition. But the competition will still take place. Although without Dima, the competition is like a headless chicken. There was another reason why the instructor summoned Li Han. These were applications for transfer to his team. The guy became popular because he knows how to use the strengths of his fighters. But the head of the 7th squad, on the contrary, receives only negative reviews. Grossman gave the boy time to think, but Li Han replied that he didn't need it, and he was taking everyone, because they were in no position to choose. The boy was happy to welcome the newcomers to his group. It was Domingo, Kwasim, Andy, and Jung Kijo. The boy wanted to see what the boys could do to separate their positions. Kijo called Li Han his Korean brother and wanted to ask him to take care of something. But the chairman of the 13th group replied that in ARC it does not matter what nationality a person has. Jung Kijo stood his ground and ended up being suspended from the class. The day of the competition has come. It was the capture of the flag. But suddenly the arena was closed with a dome, making the conditions for the night. This should reduce the boys' chances of winning. Li Han said that the boys have nothing to relax because they are in the same conditions. You need to wait until your eyes get used to the darkness. Knut's team will go first, and Jose's team will be behind. Meanwhile, Kiyokuro and the head will attack from the flank. The young man added that without Dmytro, the 5th squad is the easiest opponent of all. But one must not lose vigilance. It is necessary to give everything and win. The boys made their way and attacked the whole group. But suddenly, they saw one of the players of the opposite team sitting next to the flag. The boys were surprised because the young man just watched all this and did not even help his friends. This opponent was much stronger. He had the ability to teleport, and he easily destroyed the entire 13th squad. Conversation started in the hall. Everyone was wondering who it was. According to one of the versions, this guy's name is Taishina. This guy suffered damage to his central nervous system during training, which made him unable to speak. But immediately after that, his skills began to develop at an incredible speed. Li Han stood up again. He turned to his opponent and said that he was not going to lose. It was indeed silence, and his reserve of strength was much greater than that of all the sophomores. You won't be able to beat the guy in Khan. The commander of the blue team calculated the situation and all possible exits. The goal of the task is not to defeat all the enemies, but to take the flag and install it. The guy calculated the moment when Taisha would attack him, and specially threw his sword up. The enemy was standing over him until suddenly a sword hit him in the head, which was what the boy expected. Tisha came to his senses after 3 seconds, but it was enough to pull out the flag. The 13th team won again. The crowd was clamoring. Everyone wanted to join the 13th group. No one could believe that Li Han defeated the third year. Kuro fed the cat. There was a similar cat near his orphanage, but then he had neither friends nor talents, and now he has friends and many talents. Kiyo came up by surprise. He wanted to take the place of deputy head, and he wanted Kuro's vote to be for him. The cat began to caress the boy's legs, but he hit him right in the stomach with all his strength. Kuro was so enraged by Kijo's act that he instantly caused a gravitational anomaly around him and ordered him never to do that again. Meanwhile, Li Han came to Dimitro to ask if he was really attacked by a third-year student. But after seeing the boy's condition, he realized that it was true. Dima said that the third-year students are completely different. He didn't even have time to move, as his face was already smeared on the asphalt. And the boy added that the third-year student looked as if his head was not all right. Li Han replied that if you think about it, there are almost no third-year students in ARC, and it is quite difficult to meet them. The transition to the second year is not difficult, which means that a real competition awaits them before graduation. Kuro found a cat that was insulted by a fellow group member. Suddenly, I saw a man in a cyber suit. It was Sergeant Red. He didn't even recognize Kuro and added that the boy had changed a lot. The instructor said that he had called a car, and the boy would be picked up and gave the young man a can of soda. The sergeant is testing the new tele-armor, but it will soon be announced for the second year, so it's no big deal that the young man saw it. In addition, students cannot leave the ARC institution at their own will after the transformation, because they are just a resource for the institution. Kuro asked if the sergeant was angry with him for the boy going this far, but Instructor Red replied that people who get angry for no reason are just sacks of shit. Suddenly, the young man was surprised because he did not expect to hear such a thing from Sergeant Red. Later, a grandfather in a white coat approached. He asked about the impressions of the telesuit. The instructor replied that the suit responds to telekinesis just fine. But still he had notes, for example, it is necessary to reduce the amount of dragon flesh material for the internal system. After all, it is important to increase the power, but if the system is so sensitive, it will be more difficult to control it. And unlike the older generation, young people will calibrate telekinesis as easily as breathing air. The older man greeted Kuro and introduced himself as Charles Smith, the leader of the first group. The boy also introduced himself and shook the old man's hand. Red added that this man is a legend because he created the telesuit. Charles Smith added that the tele-armor of the first generation was made hastily, so its second version will be an order of magnitude better. It can easily be called the most perfect weapon. The instructor said that this armor was created specifically for the younger generation because he can barely control it. Red and the old man said goodbye to Kuro, and the young man left in the car. Meanwhile, the sergeant asked the scientist what would happen to the suit he was wearing. The old man replied that he would be taken apart, but the instructor was against it. It is not known when and who will need this suit, and he advised to leave the armor just in case. A day in the Ark starts at 5 in the morning, but Li Han wakes up at 4 in order to write down strategies for the competition, the characteristics of each crew member, and other specifics. Of course, the boy writes down his skills and compares them with the skills of others. The level of his telekinesis is low. In other words, not much use. He can't even use the absolute telekinesis ability that Wei told him about. But he still coped with something better. Namely, he has absolute accuracy when using telekinesis. For example, Kuro and Simon can use a pencil as a deadly weapon, but they cannot write with it. He must practice much more to improve his accuracy. The boys went for a run. Li Han asked Dimitro how he felt about yesterday's space crack. The guy replied that the crack was quite bright, just perfect for a date. This crack is a trace. It remained after the battle with the dragons and the closing of the gate. On Grossman's order, the sophomores were sent to inspect the reeds. Spatial cracks are places where the Earth and other worlds intersect. It is believed that it is because of them that people with the ability of telekinesis appeared in their world. It will be useful for young people to see a crack, and it does not pose a danger, so they should not worry about anything. After all, this crack has been forming for 10 years and has not shown any activity until now. Li Han said that he had heard others say that telekinetics feels strange around the rift. Dimitro replied that the boy's head can spin, but in general it is difficult to describe. After the run, Khan said they would meet at the helipad at 10 in the morning. And after breakfast, they have free time, so everyone independently decides how to spend it. John approached the boy. He is the head of the 10th group. He suggested that Li Han have breakfast together. After the victory over Taisha, Grossman did not want them to lose to anyone, even easily, but there were still several defeats. The 10th group was one of those who were able to overcome the 13th. Han always takes John's strategies into account and wanted to chat with him himself. But the leader of the 10th squad replied that the young man was much better at this than he was. The groups headed to Sinia, one of the 6 locations where the inner space gate opened during the first invasion. From there, the dragons flew to Korea and China. Neither conventional nor nuclear weapons helped them. They arrived at the place where the closest of the cracks is located. Li Han felt a strange pressure. It felt like an abyss was about to swallow him. All the boys started to feel bad. Some wanted to sleep, and some felt nauseous. All wanted to return home as soon as possible. Li Han saw the commander of the 10th unit and greeted him. Right before his eyes, the helicopter with the crew of the 10th group began to glow with a bright purple light, and a second later the helicopter exploded. The 13th group left the helicopter in an emergency because it was critically damaged. The instructor explained that the boys need to group up and wait for the helicopter. If the chief instructor is not there, Li Han takes command. A moment later, the instructor exploded in the helicopter. Kidjo was the first to find the head. He was surprised, but the young man replied that it was necessary to act according to the instructions. Khan realized that he had underestimated the young man. The boys went in search of the others. They broke branches to leave a trail and not get lost. On the way, they saw a rotorcraft with the 8th group. Kidjo was sickened by what he saw, but Han didn't pay much attention to it. Suddenly, there was a werewolf in front of them. Khan ordered the underling to find something useful in the helicopter while he distracted the monster. The monster is much faster than them. If they turn their backs on it, they will immediately become dead. The werewolf grabbed Han's arm, but the young man cut the tentacles with a knife and ordered Kiyo to act faster. The young man did not want to enter the helicopter because there are many corpses there. Besides, they will die fighting the monster, and so he can save himself if he escapes. The boy took himself in his hands and made a spear out of a knife and a long stick. Kiyo threw the spear into Han's hands. The werewolf switched on him, but a second later the monster fell dead. The other crew members of the 13th group lit a fire and knew that the commander would see the smoke and find them. Kuro added that if the head is nearby, everything will be fine, and Jose confirmed that Khan will make the best decisions. The 9th group came to the campfire. Kuro asked if their helicopter had crashed as well. The boys said no, but added that they were attacked, and their leader and instructor died. The boys from the 9th squad told that there were 2 werewolves and Ella. She controlled them like tame dogs. The boys started to panic, but Li Han calmed everyone down and said that he had a plan. Although help is already on its way, it will take about 5 hours to reach them. In the meantime, they will make a shelter and wait for help. 2 hours after that, the boys broke camp, and if they were simple people, they would not have been able to do anything without tools. Thanks to telekinesis, the impossible became possible. Now they just have to wait. Knuth waited for the moment, and when they were alone, he asked what they would do if the next rotorcraft also crashed. Li Han answered that now their goal is to survive, and then they will figure out what the situation will be. The boys held firm, and Kuro even made a telepathic dome that protected the boys. A fire monster appeared. Li Han ordered to throw spears at the monster using telekinesis. They only had to think about throwing. Khan and Knut attacked the werewolf, but the monster simply did not want to give up and push the boy away. They calculated where the next monsters were and set fire to the barricades. It was necessary to kill those who crossed the barricade. The boys killed an enemy creature with accurate hits, and there was one more of the same. When a group of warriors threw spears at the monster, it defended itself. Kidjo decided to kill the werewolf himself, but when it opened its mouth, he pierced its head with a spear. One of Ella's hunters hit the boy. It's time for a backup group of people. It was a special trick up their sleeve. The boys had to kill Ella and the hunters before they were spotted. The guys did it. Kuro could no longer bear the strain. Because of this, his nose began to bleed from the overload. The monsters advanced further. Their leader must have been somewhere. He was white and conscious. Li Han is full of despair. He no longer knows what to do until suddenly he sees a light from above. Hope appears in the young man and he orders everyone to get their spears. They need to hold on just a little. The boys fought the white werewolf, but he was unexpectedly crushed by Sergeant Red in a protective supersuit. Returning to the territory of ARC, the boys remembered those horrors for a long time. Half of them died that day. But they still rejoiced and had a celebration because they survived a fight with monsters. Only Li Han arrived from there differently. He is constantly in thought and walks gloomy. From the moment they came back, the fights between the groups and the competition stopped making sense. After all this, Kato approached Li Han and apologized for his behavior. Only now he realized how stupid he was. As Khan said, he couldn't kill anyone any more than he could watch death. Only after that, he realized who his real enemy was. Suddenly, they punched a hole in the wall and showed the boy a gadget on which it was written that the boy was being called urgently. Taisha himself conveyed the message and conducted it as well. Khan wondered who had summoned him. Taisha wrote back that it was Sergeant Red and ordered not to bore him. The boy greeted John Red. The sergeant ordered to sit down because they were here for a long time. Dell was still in the room. Alexander Lakor said that this situation brought huge losses for the ARC institution. He wanted to know everything about this case. A huge responsibility fell on Grossman's shoulders. Judging by surveillance cameras, the attack was carried out by Ella's magicians, but the helmsman wants to hear the opinion of everyone present. The military replied that they were competing against low-ranking creatures such as Ella's hunters. They attacked and struck first. It was the only time when they declared themselves so calmly. Ella's mages can open the gates, and the war can begin much sooner than expected. The management wondered whether to wake up the Oracle already. Sergeant Red told the boys to choose a team name. There was only one letter left, so they would be called either White or Whiskey. They will be a temporary special operations group. The boys unanimously voted for the name White, and Instructor Red replied that it was a great choice, so from today they will be called Whiskey. Now the sergeant began to name the points of the task. Alexander and management replied that the Oracle is good, but there may come a time when his help will be indispensable in the future. The command turned to Sergeant Red and asked his opinion. He replied that he could not turn to the Oracle if he was given permission to create his team. The instructor said that they will catch Ella's magicians and start extracting information from them. He announced the same task to the boys, so they went to Sinija. They were happily met by Octo and said that the boys should first choose one basic dragon weapon each. They are all numbered so that they will need to be returned. Li Han took the dragon spear in his hands. It began to glow right in his hands. Octo replied that the dragon alloy remembers the energy of the fighter's telekinesis. Dell asked if there were other weapons, such as a thinner and longer blade. But Octo replied that the guy can order individual weapons only in the third course, because he doesn't make weapons here in half a day. Then the professor showed a modified version of the airboard. It was much worse, and all the functions were removed, and he left only the controls. Sergeant Red went with the guy so that the helicopter would not be shot down. They would walk to their destination. The operation had a simple name of Capture the Mage. The main task was to capture the mage alive and return to the base. Li Han did not understand why the instructor took him on a task at all, because there are third-year students who are several times stronger than him. John Red replied that the guy is partially right, but in terms of strategy, the situation is completely different. The group led by Khan survived without equipment and was able to fight off the monsters, and this is not the only strong point of the guy. Many guys who came back from that training suffered a lot mentally. Getting on the battlefield, people break down at some point. Therefore, from another point of view, the real monster was Han. Red even thought that the guy was a psycho. Now the young man understood why the instructor chose him and Dell. Red ordered everyone to shut up. They would organize a halt at this location and split into two teams. Sergeant and Dell, and silence with Li Han. The boy remembered the group mates who did not return. They may still be in the same forest. A purple glow appeared. From this moment, the normal communication stops working, and they will use the squad's local communication. Two of Ella's fugitives were spotted. Tisha was ordered to deal with them. In one moment, the boy left two people beheaded. Suddenly, the group saw two more monsters. Thanks to Han, it was decided to watch them. Red ordered silence to follow the monsters, and they would keep their distance. After following them, Taisha came to a place where a mage was conjuring something with the help of a crystal on a wand. Most likely thanks to the same staff the helicopter was shot down. The crystal allows you to store a huge amount of energy for telekinesis. The group began the task of capturing the mage. But this task was not so simple because magicians know how to teleport. Therefore, Taisha will go and grab the object, and they will kill the rest of the monsters. From anger, Khan has a lot of telekinetic energy. Because of this, they can be calculated. Sergeant Red ordered to keep an eye on this jerk. Li Han began to have such a large amount of telekinesis that the mage heard them, and charged directly at the boy. Instructor Red had time to react and push the boy away, taking part of the blow. They fought off the monsters, and they lost interest for some unknown reason. Tisha began to beat Li Han, first throwing him to the ground and then kicking him on the head. Dell tried to calm him down. Longhair asked Tisha to calm down because Li Han is their commander at the moment, and he won't watch you as a boy beating up the commander. Dell said that if the guy did something stupid again, he would get the full program from him. Although he didn't want to admit it, Li Han really had the best strategic thinking. Khan said that everything is not so bad because the reason why they did not want to attack the monsters right away was the telekinetic attack of the magicians and the possibility of their escape using teleport. But now you cannot worry about it because the magician has used the last charge. Dell asked why the commander thought the mage didn't teleport. The young man answered that these bastards have been living here for more than 10 years, and now their lives are in danger, but they are not running away. The mage hit them with his staff, but did not send the monsters in pursuit. He took them for protection, because most likely he no longer has the ability to teleport to him. Besides, there must be a reason why he can't teleport from here. The plan was as follows. Han takes on the mage and Dell and Taisha attack the enemies from the front. The magician feels the energy of telekinesis, but if it goes from the side of the crack, it will coincide with the flow, and it will be harder to notice. Dell was amazed at Li Han's abilities. He felt nothing when he saw his dead brothers, and in a situation where the boy was guilty, he was able to gather himself and make another plan. It is difficult to call him a person. The commander made it to the required landing site in time. Now Dell and Taisha must act. The guys simultaneously began to attack as planned. But Ella's warriors were also around the magician. Li Han felt something strange again. He called it dragon fear. But it was just an illusion. There was no way he could get away, so he bit his finger to the point of blood and began to act. Meanwhile, the boys destroyed the magician's soldiers, but he understood where the bullets were flying and protected his subordinates with a telekinetic shield. The magician's only problem was that he could only see those in front of him. Therefore, Li Han successfully attacked him from behind and injected a tranquilizer. The mage began to teleport and suddenly just lost consciousness. The group's first task was successful. Li Han did not know how to apologize to the instructor, because it was because of him that the sergeant lost his leg. But Red ordered not to look at him like that, because no one removed the prosthesis, and before that he will have a disability group, and will be able to leave ARC whenever he wants. The sergeant praised Khan. He said that if they retreated, his leg would be very disappointed and cry. Thanks to the boy, the report on the operation was finished. It remained to find out the details from the magician. The guy wondered if it was possible to interrogate an alien monster. Red replied that the ARC has the only specialist in telepathy in the world, and he would interrogate the monster. Silence entered the ward. He asked how the wounded commander was feeling, and Red jokingly replied that he wanted to go on a diet earlier. But now there is no need for this, because he has already thrown it off and laughed out loud. After the conversation, the instructor ordered the boys to leave the room because he would mourn his leg. Taisha apologized to Khan for beating him on the assignment, but the boys came to an understanding among themselves. The boys ran, after which they said goodbye and went to their respective buildings. Suddenly, Taisha threw a stone at the back of Khan's head. When the young man returned, he saw that the silence and farewell wrote him a wish to study well and transfer to the 3rd year, and showed an obscene gesture. The High Inspection Commission reached the ARC facility. Alexander ordered to monitor the guests' safety. Gadgets were distributed to those who arrived. Thanks to them, they will not get lost. But Inspector James Rue didn't want to see him out because he thought it was empty talk. He wanted to cut to the chase and asked where Li Han was. The inspector handed out candies to the entire 13th squad and said that the boys could not be ashamed and take more. After all, they have a lot of sweets. Lee asked Hanu not to interfere with the boys' training. James Ryu knew that the boy did not represent himself until the moment he created his own group. And although after the incident with the crack, everyone relaxed and did not consider the competition as something important, the 13th group trained relentlessly. The boys left the training ground and went to the weapons complex. Their focus on training can only be envied. While at the gym, Li Han paired up with Kuro. He did not understand why this was because he was telekinetic. But after the battle with the monsters, the commander realized that he needed to learn all the fighting techniques. Kuro was quickly out of breath and unable to do anything but defend himself. But Han ordered him to attack because he couldn't win a fight by constantly defending himself. The boy decided to attack, but before the attack he closed his eyes and his spear flew out. Khan said that the friend should keep his eyes open and hold the spear tighter. Khan then ordered to attack him with all his might, and he would do the same. The boys were distracted from their training to watch it. Kuro apologized for his subsequent actions, but he began to use all his strength to fight. Before that, Li Han came to Wei-chan. He told about Kuro and about the fact that he worries that his soft character will one day destroy his friend. The instructor replied that this is psychological distance. For example, it is difficult for a soldier to kill an enemy with his bare hands, but he will easily do it with a bomb. It is difficult for Kuro to kill and beat on orders. He needs some other, more compelling reason, for example, how on the island the boy believed in Khan and used all his abilities. The instructor watched the boys in the hall as well. He was impressed by the strength of Class A. Kuro threw one spear with the same force as Han throws it with his hand. The commander caught the weapon and ordered to fight in full force. The boy threw a spear at the commander and Khan avoided the attack and kept getting closer to the opponent. Kuro sent all the spears he had directly to Khan. The guy blocked the attack with just a jacket. After that, it accelerated and pushed off the ground. Kuro did not stop and attacked further, but already with a spear in his hands. Suddenly, Khan broke his spear and approached the boy. After that, he hit Kuro on the forehead with his finger and added that the boy was holding up perfectly. In addition, he did not close his eyes when attacking and held the spear firmly. The young men were delighted with the battle. Khan asked his friend why he directed all the spears at the hull, because if they hit at different points, it would be more difficult for the boy to dodge. Kuro simply did not want to make a dangerous situation for his friend, so he did his own thing. Besides, he didn't expect Han to use the jacket as a shield. The instructor saw the commander of the 13th group in all his glory. He understood that the rumors were lying, because the guy is much cooler than he is described. He can tell a lot more about what ARC is silent about. James Ryu asked Han to step aside and chat. He asked about the events near the crack as everything happened. But the young man replied that he had already described everything in the report. The instructor had his own skill. He knew how to talk to a kind person and learn almost all the information simply by correctly responding to certain phrases. But this did not affect Khan. He told exactly everything that was in the report. James Ryu thought that the boy was most likely a psycho, and the young man said goodbye and said that he needed to go to training. The young man cannot be told anything about the secret squad of whiskey and the operation they carried out. The boy did not say anything and quickly bit off the man's manipulation. Ryu called someone and ordered them to give him data on the boy's time in the arcade before and after the activity near the rift. On a run, Khan met Dimitro. He was as always very energetic. But the friend said that the inspector follows him all day and looks after him, because later he will have to do his duty for his homeland. Khan did not understand what Dima was talking about, because after the victory over the dragons, the ARC will be disbanded. The guy replied that after defeating the dragons, the people in power with the help of ARC want to start a war to gain power over the whole world. The young man could not come to his senses, because after the victory over the dragons, the long-awaited peace will not come. Suddenly, an inspector comes to the training. He found out that Khan was not on the territory of ARC after the incident in Sinija. Ryu's theory was that the boy was on a secret mission. He wanted to know everything at once, even if he had to be scared a little. Behind the inspector were two healthy and armed agents. The youths were not intimidated by this. They looked aggressively at the men, and Lee Han grabbed James Ryu. The agents quickly drew their guns and pointed them at the boys, ordering them to stop and surrender. Using telekinesis, Kuro grabbed their weapons and completely disassembled them. Khan tied up the inspector and said that from now on they are under the control of ARC. Suddenly, the premises shook. Someone attacked the premises of the ARC institution. Everyone received a detention order on their gadgets and that inspectors should be found and detained because there is a traitor among them. Han put James Ryu under Han's charge. Kuro asked who exactly attacked them and thought it was Ella, but Khan replied that most likely it was people. Lee Han handed out firearms to everyone. Each one would have 2 magazines, a total of 60 rounds per person. The commander contacted the others and asked how many people from other units were responsible for protection. The commanders immediately reported the number of people. Inspector Ryu saw how easily the other commanders obeyed Han, as if he was their commander. The commander of the 13th Squad ordered all groups to gather at the 4th combat range. It is necessary to take with you all the weapons you can find. Han asked if the inspector knew anything about the attackers because during the report he thought Ryu knew something. ARC was attacked by purists. It is a group of radicals. They do not consider ARC students as people and want to destroy everyone. They are driven by religious beliefs and fear of a new kind of people with powers of unknown origin. Khan was surprised. It turns out that purists help dragons, and the inspector replied that they believe that dragons appeared precisely because of superhumans. The logic of the attackers is simple. There are no superhumans and no invasion. They cannot explain that superhumans appeared after the invasion of dragons. Khan ordered the boys to get ready. because what they were going to do now was called murder. From most of the 13th team, there will be little help, so the commander called Knut with him. The rest were in position. One very unpleasant memory came to Han about how he stole some products and ran away from the cellar. The old man grabbed the boy in front of the train, but the little boy hit him in the face and jumped away. The next moment, the man was run over by a train. The guys launched a lightweight version of the airboard by putting a shirt on it. The enemy soldiers immediately shot it, giving away their positions. Immediately after that, Knut shot the enemy and saw that another one was aiming at him. Li Han deactivated the second enemy by shooting from behind. Meanwhile, the inspector managed to untie the knot and free his hands. The enemy approached them and ordered everyone to lie down. Ryu took the weapon from Kuro and instantly shot the enemy. The inspector was shot in the head by another soldier who was sitting in the window. Luckily, Kuro saved Ryu by making a shield for him from the sewer grate with the help of telekinesis. Purists said that the Dragon Army died 10 years ago, and the Ark now exists to take over the world. The enemy commander-in-chief ordered to clear the territory. All sophomores gathered. One of the instructors began to speak loudly about his rights. But Dell calmed the man by threatening him with death. The boy shouted at the instructor, saying that there is a traitor among them, and everyone is under suspicion. Li Han reassured Del Simon. Jose was surprised that the young man listened to him so easily. Wei Chan single-handedly defeated a group of enemy soldiers and called for Li Han's help because the bastards want to attack the freshmen. The enemy was heading for the vault. A little more and they would get to the freshmen. They shot one of the instructors. Li Han asked what they should do because not everyone has a weapon. Del ordered to attack on his command. They quickly ran towards the enemy thanks to Del's telekinetic shield and neutralized the opponents. Khan said that he gathered the boys in the group for a reason. He still feels guilty because he gave in to his emotions and Sergeant Red got hurt. Therefore, the commander said that from now on, no one has the right to emotions. And if at least one of them fails, everyone will suffer. Earlier, during the regrouping, Dmytro told Khan that he would leave in connection with one case, and his deputy would be the main one. Dima entered the room and saw how the third-year student, who had previously beaten him, was beating one of the ARC employees. But the third-year student answered that they were immediately sent to the battlefield. And on one of the missions, he was completely consumed by fear and helplessness. He felt how his instincts and intuition were simply screaming at him that they would never overcome it. Dima was familiar with this feeling. It was the fear of a dragon. It is felt by every person endowed with superpowers. The senior student said that ARC uses them as ordinary consumables. It has already been used and it broke. The boy said that scientists want to introduce a substance into his body that will allow him to control brain activity to calm him down. He added that not only ARC does this, but all organizations do this. Dmytro replied that he himself did not like ARC, but first he would deal with the dragons, and only then with those bastards who treated them so badly. Li Han's team made their way deep into the bunker. The enemies noticed this and prepared a grenade launcher to deal with all of them at once. There was a feeling that someone was helping the enemy. A group of young men came across a stretcher. Meanwhile, the purists found the freshmen. The ringleader ordered to kill the children. Another bandit replied that they were just children. They were unarmed. The young purist refused to kill children because it did not coincide with his morals. But in the final case, the commander killed a subordinate and answered that their actions will be judged by future generations. The young men reached the next line of the enemy's defense and threw a grenade at them. Del didn't have time to create a barrier, so Li Han telekinesis picked up the projectile and threw it back. At that moment, the third grader fought against Dmytro. He beat him well and threw him around the room. But Dima said that he would not lose to such a coward for anything. Knut was sitting wounded and waiting for help, while the group of young men continued to move deeper into the room. Khan did not just choose training ground number 4, it really helped in the fight against the enemy. Before that, Kuro protected the group from grenades and other charges. The last hope of the enemy was air support, but it is impossible to wait for a long time because fighters from the ARC will soon arrive. Han decided to sneak into the room through the ventilation. That way he would get there faster than the enemy just touching the door. Del Simon dissuaded the commander from this, but there was nothing to do. Suddenly, Knut came to the rescue and climbed into the ventilation shaft instead of Khan. The soldiers spotted the guy and opened fire on the ventilation shaft. This became a moment to distract the bandits. Li Han ran out and neutralized many opponents. And Knut's body fell. Most likely the boy is dead. Suddenly, the lifeless boy got up. He had an incredible ability to regenerate, and the injuries he received gave him unlimited strength. A bomber drone flew over training arena number 4 and attacked a group of boys with a massive missile attack. Kuro said goodbye to everyone and thanked Li Han for his help. Suddenly, he came to himself. The thought that his friend would not give up so easily overwhelmed him. He formed a huge hand using telepathy and deflected the missile strike. One of the traitors pointed a weapon at the boy and decided to shoot him, because by taking away at least one such warrior, he would complete the mission. Knut woke up. Khan asked if everything was okay with the boy and wanted to lecture him, but the young man replied that he didn't need it. First course evacuation area, Area A, Area B, gym, and training field number 4 has been cleared. Dimitro carried the defeated senior student on his shoulders. 3 days passed. Inspector Ryu climbed to the roof of the ARC building, and Li Han was there. He asked how he was feeling, and the boy replied that he could not sleep for 2 days without medication. But in general, everything is fine. The guy added that some still can't get over it, and break objects and break windows for no reason. Even Han found it too hard to suppress the urge to kill someone or destroy something. During the mission, the boy saw a huge number of corpses in the area of the first course. They couldn't even fight back like they did a few months ago. Those bastards treated them like monsters and killed them for nothing, and now the question arose as to which of them was the real monster. It did not even occur to the purists that such mass murders could become the cause of revenge for superhumans. Li Han doesn't want to become a monster like them, because people shouldn't kill their own kind. The only desire should be to preserve life. The inspector replied that he did not even know who was standing in front of him now, an adult or a child. He was shocked by Ben Kuro's behavior, but Li Han scares him in a different way. The inspector said that after all there was a traitor among them, he caused a lot of damage, and now the top cannot show anything to ARC. The man added that he is sure that Khan does not like adults who care only about profit and reporting, and maybe even the guy wonders what will happen if everything goes under the cat's tail and they lose to the dragons. But people do not always behave wisely, and it is logical that humanity steps on the same rake, even when they know that it hurts. The inspector asked where Khan thought they would point the weapons if there were no dragons. The young man confidently answered that one to the other. Ryu added that this is why he cares about the security of his country. When the boy grows up, he will learn more. But Li Han asked what kind of cheap excuse this is. If it is known that it is a mistake, then you can simply not repeat it. Ryu only said that the boy was really scary. 2 tragedies immediately left a strong mark on the ARC institution. Most of the course died, and many left the center. Surviving sophomores receive psychological help on an ongoing basis. Li Han was the only one who transferred to the 3rd year. Walking along the corridor, he greeted Taisha. He remained silent and noticed that the boy had grown up a lot. The boy came to the Office of Telekinetic Forces, where he was met by a new instructor. In the 3rd year, they do not divide telekinetics into 1st and 2nd generation, but address them all equally. He introduced himself as Johnny Schwartz and asked what the boy's name was. The young man answered that his name was Li Han, but the instructor only heard Richan. The boy's senior was Taisha. The instructor said goodbye and wished him luck. In the 3rd year, the room was even bigger. Taisha wrote that the boy should leave his things and go to breakfast. Li Han was shocked at how different it was from the 2nd year. There, everything was under strict control, but here it is the opposite. Tisha didn't know if there was Korean cuisine here and asked if the guy would like rice. Khan replied that he didn't really miss the old kitchen. He rarely managed to eat normally. The guy asked if he eats a lot of sweet silence. He wrote back that a lot of brain activity requires a lot of sugar, and his SIDS work the same way. The young man remembered the past and began to eat rice with chopsticks. This surprised Taisha incredibly. He added that they even know how to catch flies with sticks. Silence is just a connoisseur of the movie Dragon Ornament, and there the hero catches a fly with sticks. The guy asked if the mask on Tisha's face was a copy of the mask from the movie. He replied that it was the face of the C3 model cyborg from the movie Chainsaw Killer. The order was specially for him. When the boys left the cafeteria, they were met by another instructor, who met Li Han and introduced himself as Lao Cha. Li Han saluted him and introduced himself. The boy also noticed that a corporal was standing in front of him. Lao Cha added that it was because of Han that Sergeant Red lost his leg. He laughed and said that if this happened to the corporal, the boy would feel better. The foreman said that the boy does not resemble a cute kitten, but rather a fast tiger cub. He asked if the boy had classes and called him to the training center. The corporal wanted to know how strong the newcomer was. Khan saw similarities between him and Dmitro. The sparring began. Everyone supported the boy because they thought he would lose. The corporal used standard but strong combinations of techniques. There was nothing Li Han could do. The boy decided to grab Lao Cha by the leg and throw him to the ground, but the foreman replied that the boy had already lost. He did a somersault and threw the boy right on the floor. The corporal saw that the young man did not receive any serious injuries. An ordinary person would not have endured such a thing. Li Han stood up and became very angry. He was filled with telekinetic energy and was about to attack further with his weapon. But he stopped in time and started apologizing. The corporal said that there is nothing wrong with this. Besides, it is good to have such fighting spirit. The teacher said that although their bodies are modified, muscles and everything else weighs more, but their endurance is also greater, and now they are like steel. The corporal said that Khan had acted wisely when he directed his force at the capture. He added that the problem is lack of experience, and the boy has a lot to learn. Today the classes are over, and he said that tomorrow everything will be repeated. The next day, they met again. The corporal pointed at Johnny Schwartz. He is a first-generation telekinetic and melee specialist. This can be seen from its size. He participated in 2 battles against dragons. Once he even killed a werewolf with his bare hands. The corporal pushed Khan into a fight with Schwartz. The guy decided to fight without telekinesis. They started sparring. It ended quickly. Schwartz instantly flipped the kid over and slammed him to the ground. Lao Cha asked if the boy was upset because of his loss. Han replied that he was not upset about it at all, because he would have lost in any case. The corporal replied that the boy was right, because he had no experience in fist-fighting. However, he is excellent with weapons, and there is no point in a fist-fight. After all, he will not be able to use the technique on the dragon. Khan remembered Dmitro. They chatted, and Lao Cha asked what the boy would do when he ordered him to fight Johnny again. The boy replied that he would attack him with a weapon. The instructor liked the boy's answer, because they are not MMA fighters. The main goal is to defeat the enemy using the method you know best. Lao Cha taught the boy a lot, and his associates treated Han as a younger brother. They went as a group to see a documentary about Lao Cha, who is a national hero of Thailand and also chopped down 20 ogres with just one machete. Khan fit in well with the team and already started joking. The young man decided to return to his room, although he was invited to drink something strong. He refused because he does not drink alcohol. The guy met Taisha and asked how the task went. Taisha did not answer anything and asked a counter question where the young man was. Han said that he had watched a movie about Lao Cha. Taisha suggested that they somehow watch the movie together, but quickly deleted the message and left. Previously, the hero believed that Taisha was very dangerous and strong, but now it is clear that he is as much a teenager as the young man himself. The next day, they met again in the gym, and the corporal asked if the boy wanted a rematch. Khan replied that he would compete, but the enemy would also have weapons. Lao Cha said that only 3 days had passed, and the young man already wanted to overcome Johnny, and he resembled a huge grizzly bear. And with a weapon, his appearance was even more terrifying. Li Han had been watching Johnny's technique for 3 days straight, so he was anticipating his every move. He dodged and blocked punches with such ease that it looked like he was looking into the future. Johnny asked if it was the same rookie that had come to them 3 days ago. Khan made a good counterattack and broke through the opponent's hull. When the young man delivered the last blow directly to the head, he did not notice how Johnny held the sword right at his throat and at the same time blocked the blow with his hand. The opponent praised the little one and always called him Richan. It seemed that he would never remember his name. Li Han emphasized his name again, and Johnny replied that it was not important and invited him to lunch with the instructor's friends. Lao Cha approached the young man and also praised. Because you don't always have to win. Han saved Johnny's honor and got a chance to make a new friend. Only now did the boy understand that it is not necessary to win in order to show his strength. The young man was surprised because in a short period of time the boy received many valuable lessons. The next day, Li Khan and Taisha were called by Octo. If he introduced himself again, if the guys forgot, his name is Siegfried Schumacher, and he is the chief engineer of the third group. Octo was just a nickname, all because he works so fast as if he had 8 hands. But the silence said in a whisper that it was only he who thought so. The engineer read the characteristics of Li Han. There are no special powers. Physical development is 3+ in the best case with 3+. He is the first fighter who reached Telebrony with such low indicators. He showed the third generation telearmor. Its name is Oldman 3. Lee Han must train on it every day. It is impossible to put on such armor on your own, so engineers and machines are needed for this. Octo ordered not to move or a hole would appear in the boy's shoulder. The guy asked a logical question: what to do if you want to go to the toilet? The engineer answered that you can't think about such things when you're on the battlefield, and he could not make armor without discarding some conveniences. When the assembly is complete, the cylinder will open and the boy will come into contact with the dragon component. The sensations will be the same as if he is holding a dragon weapon, that is, as the body absorbs the component. Today's task was to find out how long the boy would last in armor. The destination was a laboratory for the study of telekinesis in China. The area was paralyzed by Ella's attack, and the Chinese authorities asked for help. Only one enemy posed a particular danger. He killed 2 groups of special forces, and only ARC is able to help. Johnny said that the monster can use a teleshield, and even though an ordinary person can't handle it, it won't be a problem for them. The instructor asked if everything was correct, calling the boy Rai-chan again. The young man simply answered yes. Johnny was surprised because he expected the boy to correct him. But Khan replied that Johnny didn't even try to correct himself, but he himself made sure that everything was fine with the instructor's hearing. Exactly 1 month has passed since the boy entered the 3rd year, and this is his first task. Seeing Ella, bad memories immediately appear in the boy. It's strange, because on the site of the same laboratory there was just a desert. But this is explained by the fact that many countries conduct research in the field of telekinesis, but try to hide this fact. After all, no one needs clashes with the purists. Johnny saw that the guy was alive. He said that they don't usually kill people. But they couldn't do anything about it because there was no other choice. He only asked for one thing so the boy wouldn't get used to killing people, and called him Ri-chan again. This lightened the atmosphere. Suddenly, scientists came to them. They thanked that ARC had come such a long way. The soldiers saluted the team and called them heroes of China. Johnny told them to wait while he and Zai talked to them. One of the scientists came up and put his hand on Khan's shoulder and asked if he was an ARC soldier. The young man reflexively grabbed the scientist's hand and squeezed it so hard that he immediately calmed down and asked to let go of his hand. The group entered the elevator. They only had access to the 1st floor. The others were blocked. They had 2 goals, the first to get research data, and the second to find survivors. If they have not met the enemy, they work quietly and calmly. There is no need to look for competition, because they do not mind blowing everything up after the operation is completed. The researchers did not talk much about the data. For this very reason, the Chinese soldiers were dissatisfied, because their comrades died just like that. Johnny added that even if everyone but him died, the guy should not think about revenge. You just need to go away, because the genes of the 2nd generation are an incredibly valuable resource. They began the mission and moved deep into the corridor, scanning everything for the presence of the enemy. The 1st floor was clear, so they went down to the 2nd. But Lee Han felt something was wrong, as if he had missed an important detail. The guy realized what was wrong. It looked like the laboratory was being attacked from the inside. Johnny was also worried about many things, such as why there is no direct elevator to the 3rd floor. There is a need to maintain control. The captain ordered to turn back because the scientists had given false information. And they will have to answer for this. The light suddenly went out. It was as if they were being listened to. Suddenly, the young man remembered how the scientist put his hand on him and looked at his shoulder. Something was not fixed there. He took out a listening bug. This meant only one thing. They were forced to continue working. Communication is lost. If they can get out, it will be necessary to find the emergency power room. Passing further, they entered the corridor, where the bodies of soldiers were scattered. Lee Han felt sick from what he saw. It took him a while to come to his senses. The guy apologized for his reaction, but the others replied that the young man might not worry, because they were also seeing such horror for the first time. Johnny added that it is impressive that Lee Han did not faint, because he is the same age as his younger brother. Our hero shared that he also has brothers. The captain also had a family, but one day his family was ambushed by Ella's soldiers. Everyone was killed, and the boy came out in tears and brandished pitchforks. He understood that it would not help, but he did not want to live anymore. But it turned out that a person cannot die just like that, even if he desperately wants to. That's why he became a soldier and rushed into every battle as if it was his last mission in life. As soon as death provoked him, he did not die, and the reputation of a beautiful warrior only grew. Khan was surprised that John had such a tragic story. The boy wondered what he would do if his brothers were killed. The group made their way to the second floor, which was also clear, and no signs of tracking or the monster itself were seen. They went to the third floor. On the third floor, there is the only lock in the entire building with an electronic lock, and if the building is disconnected from the power, the lock cannot be opened. Johnny didn't care about the locked door. He simply opened it with his own hands. Now Han saw the bonus from the physical boost. They saw a monster standing with some kind of weapon. Everyone immediately ran for cover. The monster's attacks did no damage to Johnny, and he threw the grenade and disappeared. They were surprised. Ella was using human objects. In addition, the monster lured one of the group to brutally kill. Ella understood that an attack with a firearm would not harm the group, so she would not appear just like that. The monster absorbed the bodies of the killed soldiers and became much stronger. Meanwhile, the group started emergency power. Most likely, the scientists wanted to make a soldier out of Ella, and they did it secretly from the ARC and the entire top. Suddenly, a crossroads appeared. The team decided to follow the trail of the killed workers. After the scientists captured Ella, they sealed her away and tried to control and upgrade her. But all they managed to do was make the monster uncontrollably strong. This cannot be done because the ARC allied countries must report to the institution and the top. This is just a formality, and other countries also do this. Khan sees that all this turns into a battle of people again. Johnny said that it's just like that. Most likely people who won't let them go from above. Everything was in Chinese on the computer. It was necessary to copy exactly what was necessary and go away. The enemy came to them again. They shot at him and he used a teleshield. Li Han wanted to use the spear, but Johnny ordered him to move away and added that he would handle the monster himself. But suddenly the reptile teleported and took Harold by the neck. They began to attack the monster and the man could not be saved. Li Han saw a strange feature. A crystal was attached to the monster. The young man said that it was necessary to kill the monster. The commander asked if this was not revenge, but the boy replied that this was the most favorable moment to kill the reptile, because it was wounded and could not fully move. Ella cannot teleport multiple times in a row or teleport and defend with teleplates. That's why the bastard used Harold as a human shield. At the crossroads, they split up. Each of them could meet the monster. The commander gave the order not to let anyone die. Lai Han walked down the long corridor and saw a pile of dead bodies attached directly to the wall. He quickly composed himself and walked on. He understood that the exhibition of corpses is not needed to scare someone. It plays the role of recharging the crystal. To fill the crystal with energy, the creature remembers all the hatred for people that it felt when it was mocked. And seeing a killed enemy replenishes the energy supply. Khan felt that the monster was right behind him, and it was about to attack him. The young man successfully dodged the blow and started shooting straight at the monster. Now it is impossible to let him escape, so the boy picked up a spear made of dragon bone. Ella tried to teleport, but Khan launched a spear in the enemy's path. He hit the monster right in the head. The guy said that it shouldn't be like that. Johnny added that if the top had dealt with this situation in a smarter way, so many people would not have died. But it doesn't matter to them because they manage people's lives just by saying a word. A few dead soldiers do not play any role for them. They were not able to do what the boys did and feel responsible for everyone. But in the end, feelings are dulled. Li Han couldn't believe it, but the fact remained the fact, such is human nature. Johnny added that if a boy's heart becomes so numb that he stops feeling it in his own chest, he should always remember in his head that all lives are important. Khan replied that he had not forgotten a single boy who died next to him and was not going to forget in the future. They came out of the bunker and the military together with the scientists were waiting for them. Weapons were directed at the group and a strong wind rose in the desert. The boys wanted to break through, but Zai had other ideas. He wanted to talk to the soldiers. He told how the center deceived the military and that through bullying they created a monster. And to hide this fact, they killed all the soldiers in the center. The scientists shouted and ordered to shoot Zai, but the military listened to them carefully. He added that the military are not slaves and took up arms voluntarily, but the weapons were aimed at the wrong people. The soldiers of the Chinese army thought, because the order was really strange, why should they shoot at the ARC soldiers as soon as they left the laboratory? And since soldiers are an invaluable source of the nation's military power, they can question orders and challenge unsubstantiated orders. Zai Jun was not just an ARC soldier, he is a national hero of China. It was he who made the greatest personal contribution at the front during the First War. Most of the soldiers joined the service after seeing Zai as an example for themselves. Suddenly, the scientist took the commander by the shirt and ordered to shoot the ARC soldiers. Otherwise, he will kill the commander himself and his family. A shot rang out. The scientist was killed by a shot directly in the head. The guy asked if everything was in order. The military replied that it was unknown because they still did not listen to the order. In addition, sooner or later, the top will find out about what was happening in the scientific center. A group of scientists should be responsible for everything. Zai thanked the commander for listening to him and doing exactly that. The head of the army group replied that the real hero is Zai because he gave up everything to join the ARC. The soldiers of both sides saluted each other and went home. Suddenly, Johnny noticed that Lee Han was sleeping. He had never seen the boy sleeping, but it was not surprising because they had been through a lot. Harold's funeral was held the next day. Everyone, including Lee Han, saluted. After the funeral, the boy said that he was scared because if Zai had not been an important person, they would have all been shot before he could say anything. All ordinary soldiers in the ARC are considered heroes in their homeland. Suddenly, Zai replied that he was not that cool, and his achievements were embellished in order to gain more recruits. Johnny came up and said that the man doesn't need to be humble, because he earned that title of hero immediately after joining the ARC. He turned again incorrectly and ordered him to go with him immediately because he was being summoned. The commander ordered to wait in the room and left himself. The battle between Squad 13 and Dell's squad was broadcast on Anchor TV. Recently, he has become incredibly strong. Lee Han was summoned by the chief of staff himself. He wanted to talk about Kuro. The boy saluted and Alexander offered to sit down. He wanted to ask the young man if Kuro could be considered incapacitated, and Khan was the only one who could figure it out. Kuro awakened abilities of the highest rank during the attack of the Purists. He crashed a fighter jet with his powers and has refused to train ever since. Han was asked to assure Kuro to continue training. He came to Kuro's room and they greeted each other. The young man said that it was not his mistake, it was just the way things turned out. But Kuro believed otherwise. Maybe he really wanted the death of the enemy. Khan replied that in any case it was right, because he was protecting his friends. But the boy stood his ground. He believed that this was the end for him. Our hero replied that his friend is too kind, so much so that Khan himself cannot understand him, because for him, sympathy for the enemy is a luxury. Unlike other children who had their own motives, Kuro tolerated and followed Hano. If this continues, our hero may lose another close friend. He said that in such a case, Kuro should surrender, because he is clearly not someone who should be on the battlefield, and surrendering is quite normal for a boy. Lee Han is sure that if Kuro was surrounded by enemies, he would kill everyone without thinking, but probably his friend will not be able to do the same for him. Therefore, he should surrender. The guy saw that the military was going to stop him. He threw a metal table blocking the entrance. Despite all the military threats, the young man refused to obey the orders and replied that he was busy talking. Lee Han said that from the beginning, he wanted to convince Kuro to stay. But after carefully considering everything, he realized that even if his friend survives the war, she will remain with him for the rest of his life. The guy asked if Khan would be punished for this, but our hero himself did not know the exact answer. He could be sent to the battlefield at any moment because the maximum he could face was a reprimand. The military broke down the door and charged at Han, which made Kuro angry. He ordered the soldiers not to hurt their friend. Alexander met with Khan. He was surprised and even at first believed that the boy was dissuading his friend from the service. But even in his current state, the boy is ready to kill people. Kuro said Khan assured him to continue training and asked him to let his friend go. The guy got up and turned to his friend. He said that despite all the power, Khan has weaknesses, and Kuro has a power that will help him. And even though Han has always protected him, from today, everything will be different. They will be equal. Alexander spoke with Red. The sergeant's words about Khan's incredible charisma were confirmed, but that's what scares him. Our hero began to train at the usual pace. He fought with Johnny every day. Khan secretly told that it would be better if he said that he wanted to learn to fight at the same level as the instructors. The two take great delight in humiliating him. Taisha asked why the boy is studying martial arts if they won't even be useful to him. But Khan has a different take on it, because different skills will come in handy in battle. so he wins in any situation. After the last training, all the muscles of our hero's legs and buttocks hurt. After all, the instructor made the boy sit on the splits. Taisha asked whether to take the boy to his room, but the young man replied that he was fine. The next day, Sergeant Red came to training. He spectacularly opened the door with his foot and shouted that the father was in the room. Johnny joked and said he saw the sergeant's new boots. Red asked if the man wanted the same for himself. The instructor decided to continue his duties and will be a temporary coach for freshmen. You need to take a lot of guys for the second year, and he needs time to recover. Red told him that he had heard about Lee Han's success in a recent mission and said that the boy had matured. His shoulders were right at the level of his head. While in the yard, the sergeant lit a cigar again. The young man noticed that Red was sneezing again in the smoking area. The instructor simply told the guy to lie down because there are no smoking areas in ARC. He raises this topic every time at meetings, but everyone just sneezes. But Red came with news. It was about the mage they kidnapped on the mission. Khan wondered if he had managed to extract information from the monster. Red replied that everything worked out and all the data was received directly from the magician's head. It turns out that in 3 years there will be no war. Vanguard has already completed all preparations. Still, the prophecy that the Earth would be attacked in 10 years was true. But if there is a Vanguard, then the war will start much faster than they thought. The next day, Johnny knocked on the door and called out to the boy, calling him Raichan as usual. Khan came out and the instructor handed him a flash drive. He called it a gift. It was a recording of the 13th Squad. The man asked why the young man was sitting in the room on the day off. Did he not like being with old people? But the guy replied that all they do is usually throw mud at someone. He had no idea that a woman could be called such a large number of obscene words. The instructor laughed and advised not to sit in the room but to do something useful. They said goodbye, and the boy ran as fast as possible to turn on the recording of yesterday's fight of the 13th group. They again competed against the 3rd Squad. Kiyo became the deputy head. Even though he has a bad character, he is quite intelligent. Thanks to the head, his home team earned a victory. The boy couldn't believe it. Kijo cut Simon off from the others and brainwashed him until the evening. The boy lay down and began to think about who would be transferred to the 3rd course next. After all, he was lonely without friends. Meanwhile, Red was chasing a man. He wanted him back in the ARC. But he refused and wanted to sneeze at the ARC institution. After all, they teach children to kill there. As a child, he was transferred to this organization because of his father's wishes. It was all called a peace mission. But ARC was and is one of thousands of similar cults created during the war. He was raised as one of the best fighters in the organization. And they trained with merciless methods every day. He started with small animals, later switched to dogs, pigs, cows, and later monkeys. In the end, he got to the people. He made the first kill very quickly. He cannot let other children go through what happened to him. Red replied that if they lose this war, humanity will perish. Therefore, they will argue about human rights when they survive. He will not give an order to kill someone. He wants the man to at least step into the role of an instructor. Red didn't know how else to get his friend into the ARC, so he said he'd just disconnect him now and just take him to the base. They started a fight. The unknown person held a blade right near the instructor's head and said that he could easily kill him and didn't do it, so they better go their separate ways. But Red replied that he would rather kill him because he will not return to the base without what he needs. They threw words at each other and continued the fight. The unknown punched the instructor in the eye. His blows were like the movement of a sword, but Red counterattacked and put the opponent in a blackout. They were both lying on the ground. Johnny came and asked which one of them was dead if both were dead. After that, the sergeant got up and said that he had crushed the opponent with the help of pyrokinesis. The instructors reported on the successful completion of the mission, and Johnny asked the name of the unknown person and called him Ri-chan. Red replied that it was Wei Chen and called his colleague an idiot. In the evening, Li Han was sitting on a bench and drinking soda water. Johnny sat down next to him and asked if the boy would drink alcohol. The young man refused. The instructor said that this is quite logical because the boy is only in the body of an adult and his brain is just like a child's. The instructor ordered the boy not to die because they have to drink beer. Khan asked if they would only talk about Aliogol. Johnny shared that the boy will become a better fighter than himself in 2 years. Until then, even the ARC will not be able to control the younger generation. He asked not to become a monster of Li Han by calling the boy by his wrong name as usual. The next day, the young man tried on the telesuit again. He threw the ball. Octo was pleased because the imp was terribly effective. Even though Li Han has the lowest telekinetic ability in the history of ARC, he shows excellent results. The difference between Khan and other fighters is that if someone can divide their power by 10, then the guy divides it by 20. He is a treasure. The workout is over, and the activity period is 25 minutes, which is better than last time. The boy could not move. There was not a drop of strength in him. Octo apologized for making him wait for a long time and took off the boy's armor. After training, the engineer approached the young man and asked how he was feeling. Khan replied that everything hurts him, but this is logical because the boy will use all his strength and telekinesis until he faints. Octo said that the boy will soon get used to it and added that the second-generation telearmor will be much more convenient. Unfortunately, they can only create 8 sets of second-generation armor because they have few components. The boy began to ask how many young men will be transferred to the third course because there are only 15 boys from his course. Red met with Khan. As usual, he pulled out a cigar and they talked about Taisha. It was clear that the boys became great friends. Silence doesn't get along so well with everyone because he can tell when someone is falsely caring about him. Khan, on the other hand, sincerely cared about everyone from an early age. The boy became interested in why Silence always wears a mask. Red's face changed, but still he answered that it was just for beauty. The new student who was transferred to the third year was Del Simon. He was met by Johnny and began to give a tour. He added that he is interested in working with a genius, but he has big plans for the young man. Del didn't like it because his parents called him that, and they always showed him off. He was always the best. But suddenly, at the academy, he met Kuro, who had an S rank. People of this rank are different from others because their strength cannot be achieved by any training. Del was nervous and trained hard to become the best, while Kuro just cried. Khan and Taisha were called to the meeting. Later, Corporal Zai joined. He informed the boy that he would become the deputy leader of the group. After all, there are not so many fighters of the first generation in the ARC, so there are just as few leaders. The corporal asked if Khan knew about the spatial rift in Tirana. Tirana is the capital of Albania, and the second place where the second spatial rift opened during the First War. At that time, people could not stop the enemy's troops, so the entire Balkan Peninsula, together with Albania and Greece, turned into an empty place. Khan thought that most likely the enemy is trying to reopen the crack like in Siniju, but everything was much more serious. All the combined forces that defended the crack have been destroyed. The second wave of attack will be announced soon. All forces of the ARC must be ready to enter the fight. Some mages can open entire tunnels, so enemy forces can move in large groups. Their number is only growing. Suddenly, the conversation was interrupted by Johnny, who was just bringing Del to the meeting. Del Simon considered Li Han not a colleague but a competitor. He wanted to become better than him. The instructor sat down in the center and announced the task. It consisted in the fact that it was necessary to stop the opening of a spatial crack. 7 members of the first generation will compete with them. Each of the fighters will be in tele-armor. If they fail, the dragons will take over the world, and they will have to fight them face to face. Khan asked when they were leaving, and Johnny, putting on his glasses, said now. They went to the outpost in Tirana, and the interspatial rift was 20 kilometers away. Several teleshields were seen in the fault zone. The dragon recruitment ceremony most likely takes place in one of the domes. It was possible to draw a logical conclusion that the domes can be hit by missiles, but even nuclear bombs will not penetrate them. After the commander-in-chief's speech, Khan and the others gathered in the courtyard and discussed the details of the operation. While the united forces compete with the enemy army, each of the squads searches for a shield and destroys Ella's mages. There are 7 fighters in tele-armor in the air, and 3 of them can protect one of the groups, but only as a last resort. They must hold out as long as they can regardless of potential casualties. Monsters of this type were not taken by grenades and other types of weapons. They should be feared because they can enter a state of sleepwalking. In this state, they rush right under the track of the tank and completely stop it. If it were not for their stubbornness, they would die as a species. Khan was walking with the group. There were 4 grants ahead of him. Suddenly, an ogre burst in. Del and Han have to deal with the ogre. The rest of the team neutralizes the grants. The boys confused the ogre, but Khan suddenly found himself behind the back of the monster's head. Del cleared the way for his companion from stones, and the young man delivered the last blow, piercing his head with a spear. Studying the territory, they came across corpses of people. They died recently. Likely to have a werewolf around, Khan ordered Taisha and Del to hold their melee weapons. On standby, the group calculated where the werewolves were and the boy quickly launched a powerful grenade into the monster's shelter. Suddenly, Khan saw Ella's hunter. Everyone needs to move to shelter immediately. The monster almost hit one of the soldiers with a charge, but Dell reacted in time and used a teleshield. Li Han took the grenade in his hands. He wanted to launch it directly at the hunter. But the brothers refused the idea because the distance is too great. Nevertheless, the Khan threw the grenade, concentrating his telekinetic energy on it. The monster on the neighboring house was destroyed. The boys praised the commander for his excellent technique. The team reached the TV panel. It was necessary to wait 5 minutes for the Izzy team to arrive for help. Khan ordered Zaya to put up a streamer and strap on as many grenades as possible, because when the monsters hear the shooting, they will run to them. The corporal was surprised at how quickly the boy became a first-class soldier, but deep down it wounded him. After all, he is only a 10-year-old child. The plan was as follows. All members of the squad except Tisha will clear the way to the teleshield, and Tisha will walk down the corridor and kill the mage Ella. Tisha associated himself with a samurai who cut down the moon and began to move into a big mage. Attacking the enemy, he constantly changed the screensaver of his screen to his head. Before killing all the monsters, he turned on a screensaver with the words, "No mercy." The Izzy squad destroyed Point 9. Khan asked what kind of effects on the screen the boy turned on during the battle with the enemies, but Taisha simply made an obscene gesture in response. They headed to Point 8. They were contacted by Squad Alpha 1. The group had just cleared the area and were able to join Khan's team. Only the Alpha Group commander added that they are in trouble because they destroyed the dome and simply ran away. Now, they are being chased by a crowd of monsters. Khan knew that Derek was the commander of the Alpha unit. He had a great command of electricity, but there was no place to use it on the battlefield. He told his friend that he could run to the pool, even though the water supply was turned off and it had rained recently. Derek understood what the boy was implying. The Alpha group was almost there, but when the squad went to the pool, they saw that it was completely empty. Khan miscalculated and framed his comrades. Zai ordered the boy to pull himself together, because so far no one has died. Action must be taken. The Izzy squad ran to help the Alpha group. The enemy came from behind, so you need to kill only those monsters that are too close. Khan understood that by using the tele armor, they would win the battle, but the other squad might not have enough help. He decides to deal with the enemy on his own. The Izzy commander thought he saw that there was a water tank nearby. He ordered Tisha and Dell to move to the other side of the pool. It was necessary to drag the monsters into the pool. Meanwhile, Taisha will check if there is water there. Dell needs to prepare and be ready to blow the lid off. Khan gave the order to retreat from the pool. There was enough water in the tank, and it filled the pool to the top. It's time for Derek to use his ability. He could barely stay on his feet because he used a lot of strength. Khan caught him and told him to hold on. There were too many monsters around the last dome. One last dash had to be made. Li Han ordered the silence to break through the shield. But something incomprehensible was happening. There was no time to think. They needed to defeat Ella's mage. A monster's paw came out of the crack. Even compared to the size of the dragons that were in ARC, this one was twice as big. Silence suddenly told the boy not to even think about dying, because courage is not the denial of fear, but its acceptance. Khan didn't even think about dying, but he asked a friend where this phrase came from. Taisha replied that it was the movie Moon. It's about a samurai. When they return to ARC, they will review it together. The monster stuck its head out of the portal. All the fighters nearby died immediately. It was necessary to summon the tele armor immediately to defeat the monster. But he used force that simply made the soldiers unable to fight. First of all, the dragon wanted to destroy the plane with the tele armor because it is made of the flesh and blood of his brothers. Khan understood that death awaited them if he did not act. The dragon began to fill the boys' thoughts with references to their death wishes. There were so many of them that the brain could barely cope. Dell saw that Li Han kept his sanity and ran to attack with a spear. And if the commander can, then so can Dell Simon. The young man took control of himself. But moments later, the dragon's power overcame him. Li Han understood that he would not kill the dragon, but he might at least change the trajectory of its attack. The dragon saw this and said that it was just a worthless attempt. And Khan is the only one who still has hope for humanity. The monster did not like the boy's look and told him to prepare for the young man's death. But Han sat and did nothing, which surprised the dragon. Suddenly, the crack closed. Being in tele armor, Instructor Johnny just jumped into hell itself. The dragon took him with him. Khan passed out and remembered all those warm moments with the instructor, how they planned to drink beer together and train. He was awakened by Sergeant Red. The boy spent 2 days in the hospital. Although Schwartz was dragged along with the monster, he is considered missing and not dead. The young man asked to leave him alone. Red went out into the corridor. Other instructors were already standing there. The sergeant explained the situation to them. Meanwhile, the instructors gathered at a meeting. They decided several issues. The first was information about the enemy. Most likely, all the monsters in the area were killed. The next question was much more important. It was asked by Octo. He wanted to entrust the prototypes of the second generation, that those entrusted to the first group should be transferred to the third. After all, prototypes can be launched right now. The two scientists argued because the ratio of the material was too great and people would barely move in them. Octo replied that it was all a delusion, and the armor should be entrusted to at least a normal group, because the prototypes would still be sent for analysis. The engineer had an ideal candidate. He was a real talent and asked to trust him. 3 days later, Lee Han and Del Simon crossed paths in the hallway. The boys stopped, and the young man thanked the long-haired man for helping him during the battle with the dragon. But Del yelled that Khan should not even compare him with his group, because he is the commander himself. A verbal altercation began between the boys, and they decided to go to the gym to close the issue. At that time, Khan wondered if he had done the right thing, because the boy looked upset. Maybe he had pushed him too hard. Suddenly, Dmytro and Knut called the young men. They too became third-year students. Han and Del instantly calmed down, but decided not to make eye contact with each other. Entering the dining room, all the soldiers sitting there greeted Lee Han, and later Derek approached, with whom they agreed to be friends if they survived. The guys sat down at the table, and Taisha again picked up a bunch of sweets, and this time he took a whole cake. Silence sat and meditated for 5 whole days. He calls it a battle with the wall. Khan asked why he did this and where his mask was. The boy forgot to charge his mask and was meditating because he was in the grip of memories. He could not stop remembering that the boy alone went into battle against the dragon. Knut met Taisha and introduced himself. He raised his mask and started eating the cake. The guy noticed that Tisha is a girl. The young man could not figure out whether Tisha is really a girl, so he decided to check. Now is the right moment because there is no automatic mask that would prevent this. Knut tried to remove the mask, but Tisha noticed it and quickly teleported away. Lee Han said that this should not be done anymore, and Knut together with Derek decided to make a plan. The guys even made their squad. They all wanted to know who Taisha is without a mask. The plan was that when Silence practiced teleporting, he would lose his powers, at which point they would capture him and find out the truth by removing his mask. They expected that while the training was coming to an end, they would soon reveal the biggest secret in ARC, but the young men could not calm down. Taisha easily handled them. The guys came to the conclusion that they need a commander. They began to convince Lee Han to become their commander-in-chief, but he was not at all interested in knowing who was behind the mask. Then Knut pressed on the feelings of the commander and asked him to remember those wonderful times when they worked as a team and how cool Lee Han himself was. The young man could not stand it and agreed to organize the task, but it was the first and last time. The guys got together. They needed to wait for Taisha to be on the roof. He put marks in the right places. The guys needed to deal with it quickly. The team was surprised at how well Lee Han is able to make a plan. The commander said that he personally will not participate in this, so the boys will act independently. He advised not to approach the Silence closer than 20 meters or he would catch them. And if the Silence disappears, then the team should run as fast as possible and maybe they will be lucky not to get a full score. They took a position. Taisha was chased by Knut, and then his partner tried to catch her. Taisha believed that most likely they had a smart leader because the boys simply wouldn't have enough brains for all this. Silently, he ran to the roof, and as expected, Lee Han was standing there. He made a trap and successfully activated it. But the boy did not take off Taisha's mask. He simply put a bucket on his head. It was obvious that Taisha was offended. Lee Han came to Tisha's room and asked for forgiveness. Tisha asked why he did that. The guy replied that Knut had helped him a lot before, and he simply could not refuse him. In addition, he himself was interested in learning something, but he called himself an idiot. Tisha wondered what exactly the young man wanted to know. Lee Han replied that he was wondering if he could catch him with his power. In addition, he is interested in what Taisha looked like. Tisha put on a mask and went out to Khan. The young man added that he could call Knut to personally apologize for everything. But Taisha had enough of Khan's apology. The guy was about to leave when the masked man pulled him into his room. The day has come when the organization will catch everyone. ARC discovered the location of the headquarters thanks to the Dragon War Harmut. Because the enemy will appear in either case, some leaders must surrender for personal safety. All this for the sake of humanity. Li Han and Knut were out for a morning jog. The young man said that he went to apologize to Taisha, and that Taisha replied that he even liked to spank them. Khan hopes that they won't go on adventures anymore. Suddenly, Dmitro ran at high speed and ordered to disperse. The guy offered to watch a second movie because Taisha gave him a flash drive with the movie yesterday. While in Taisha's room, he saw that he really likes watching movies. It was the only way for him to see the outside world. He remembered that the guy in the mask had been an ARC for a long time, and his life consisted only of training and movies. Although Taisha knows that cinema is very different from reality, she still admires it. Suddenly, Li Han was summoned. The matter was urgent, and you can't ask questions on the way. The boy entered the hangar and was met by Alexander, the chief of staff. Although it is against the rules and Khan cannot be at this facility, Alexander said that some people really want to see him here. The second commander of the ARC unit wanted to meet with the boy. Khan saw an old man in front of him. He asked the boy to shake his hand. But suddenly, as soon as he touched it, the two of them went into an unknown place. The old man told that this is the inside of the boy, and his true image. He told that Khan is incredibly skilled for his age and asked what made him so. The old man asked for permission to see what exactly made the boy like this, and Khan broke free and did not let him do it. Alexander began to shout at the boy because he was not a simple person. The old man reassured the chief of staff and added that he was just a child, and children usually react that way. Li Han carefully blocked his consciousness. Even such a strong telepath was unable to consider at least some details. Now the old man was finally convinced that the boy could be trusted with second-generation telearmor. After that, he asked to leave him alone. Li Han saw that the old man's hands were tied, as evidenced by the bruises on his wrists. Most likely, the commander is not in his right mind. Alexander said that the boy is right. The old man is sick because he worked hard for a long time, and the time when he can be himself is very limited. At such moments, he solves matters related to the headquarters and goes through papers, and today he spent precious time on the boy. Second-level telearmor is as strong as a dragon. If the warrior does not match the level, then the armor becomes as much of a problem for humanity as the dragon itself. The soldiers headed for the desert. Even in the shade, it was incredibly hot, as if in hell. It was here that the dragon appeared during the first battle. Its attacks were so strong that they could destroy absolutely everything. The monster's powerful attacks created a large hole in the ground. The locals called it the Dragon Gorge. Recently, the remains of a dragon were found there. According to radiocarbon analysis, it is older than humanity. Knut asked how Taisha could still be wearing a mask because it was so hot. But he replied that air conditioners were installed in the ARC helmet, and it all works thanks to the additional power supply. Scientists came and offered to go and examine the remains of dragons. Of all those present, only Khan left, followed by Tisha, because two are needed in the group. The remains were simply huge. It was necessary to find out if they were really the bones of a dragon. Khan was asked to scan the remains. He touched it with his hand and released telekinesis, after which all the remains lit up with a telekinetic glow. And the boy could not take his hand away, so Taisha helped him. One of the scientists accidentally stepped on something, reaching out to see what it was. An unknown object began to devour him. It was the worm of death. He survived after so many years. Khan said that their enemy is a worm, so everyone get ready and immediately run into the elevator, because soon the monster will enter the second phase. They have almost climbed the mountain. The monster must be cut off its head and not let it eat anyone, otherwise it will become much bigger. The monster climbed to the surface. Ordinary bullets did not take it, and thanks to teamwork, the boys neutralized the enemy. Li Han threw the grenade right into the monster's mouth, and Taisha chopped off his head at a very high speed. The soldier dropped the severed part of the worm's body and began to walk carelessly near the creature's head. Despite all of Li Han's warnings, the boy did not leave. And the next moment, the worm ate the young man, instantly reborn from the cocoon. The monster progressed. Now it had wings and began to fly away. Meanwhile, Kuro was showing great abilities. He was currently in the potential S-class phase. After the ordeal, the boy was offered a snack, but the boy just wanted to take a break from it. He saw their feigned kindness. The scientist said that soon Kuro will be transferred to the third year. Li Han single-handedly defeated the monster by piercing his head through, and after defeating the monster, the boy almost crashed. Del saved him from falling. He sent an airboard to the boy. Excavations showed that the theory about the origin of dragons was wrong, but Alexander replied that it would be necessary to deal with it after the victory over the dragons, and now it is an excellent material for tele-armor and various types of weapons. It went to the oracle, people wanted to wake him up, and Instructor Red argued with that and said it was too soon. The sergeant went out of control and came to his senses only after a blow from Alexander. The boys in the dining room discussed the appearance of the oracle. It was he who made the prophecy about the invasion of dragons. Suddenly, a beautiful girl came into the dining room. Everyone paid attention to her. It looked a little strange because mostly only fighters became. This girl is an oracle. Instructor Red couldn't stand her for some reason. He took the cigarette from the girl and dragged it in an unknown direction. Li Han began his first training on the second-generation telearmor. The first training was very exhausting for the boy, but Octo was satisfied. After all, at such a pace, the boy will cope with the tests. Octo said that later, Li Han will have to take a test in front of the main ones, but he is sure that the young man will pass it easily. Li Han wiped the sweat from his face and asked the engineer if he knew Sergeant Red. The man was surprised by Li Han's question, but he also asked about the oracle because she had just woken up and why she was sleeping in the first place. The young man thought that she was injured and was recovering for a long period of time, but Octo replied that she was sleeping in a cryogenic chamber. Such a camera costs a lot of money, as does the creation of telearmor, but its abilities are worth it. Li Han asked why the girl was being frozen. Octo said that some of the first telekinetics could not withstand the stress on them, and later they started having problems with their heads. People seem to turn to stone, and this leads to death. And the girl has very little left, and no one will be surprised when the oracle simply dies. Khan was surprised and listened carefully. Suddenly, the oracle herself asked Octo what they were talking about so interestingly. The man was scared. He asked what the girl was doing in his laboratory. She came with a request. Oracle asked if the engineer still had those portable consoles left that required two-handed operation. She was incredibly bored and wanted to do something, but Octo replied that there are no such consoles in ARC. This did not bother the girl much. She grabbed the man by the shirt and forced him to find something or do it himself. The engineer replied that he did not know what to do in this situation, and the girl's gaze shifted to Li Han. She saw his muscles and realized that the guy was from the second generation. She was shocked by his body structure. They were just steel. Oracle asked how much time the guy spends in the gym. The girl invited the boy to be alone, where no one would disturb them. So that no one would loom over the engineer, he said that today's training is over for the boy, so they can chat outside the laboratory. Octo whispered to Khan to take her away immediately because she was sick of him. Oracle said that she heard everything and ordered Octo to take care of her set-top box. The man was angry and didn't know what to do, so they left. When they went out into the yard, Khan asked what the girl wanted to talk about. She asked if Octo had told everything about her condition. Oracle said that she really didn't have much time left. Her hair used to be different. The girl wanted to spend her last days in happiness, not in the prison of ARC. She offered the young man to go with her somewhere far away from here. There was an awkward silence between them, and the oracle began to beat her hand against her hand in distress. Khan turned and walked away, replying that if that was all, then they had nothing to talk about. The girl asked to stop. She made sure that the boy did not understand the jokes and that Red was right about him. The guy replied that she knew him well. The oracle said that's why she took him with her. She wanted to show him something. The boy did not understand what she was talking about and asked what exactly he should see. Oracle touched Li Han's head with her hand. A strange light appeared around her hand. The girl said that if the boy wants to survive, he must not show himself on the battlefield. Sergeant Red is worried about the boy, and Khan should know that. He became interested in what exactly the girl had done and asked if she had looked into his future. But the fact was that the oracle did not see anything. That is why she warned. After all, if the future is not visible, then the person will most likely die eventually, and the boy himself caught the logic. But Khan added that he will most likely die because there are cases when people survive. The oracle was shocked by the boy's answer. He thanked the girl for warning him, and he really appreciates it, but his whole life is literally balancing on a razor's edge. But he added that no matter what, the chances of dying are always high. Oracle was touched by this. She saw Han's resemblance to Sergeant Red. She got terribly angry and shouted that a boy can live so that in the end he dies like a dog. A month passed. Instructor Red returned to ARC and called Taisha and Khan. He said that the troops had returned to ARC, after which he took a puff of a cigar to say something serious. He continued that during one of the sorties, Corporal Lao Cha died. Khan was saddened by the news and Taisha left. It was hard for him to lose his friend. The boy could not believe that the corporal was simply gone. It felt like he was just somewhere far, far away. Li Han shared that he feels less and less sad every day, and is this normal? Instructor John Red was silent and took another puff. He said that from the very beginning, Li Han was not like the others, but if he was normal, he would hardly have survived. The boy was not hardened by the difficult circumstances in which he lived. The young man survived only thanks to his own strength. They stood in silence for a few seconds, Khan pondering the sergeant's words. Red said that the boy had an important test ahead of him, so they had to go. Li Han remembered the instructor Johnny. He seemed to be talking to the boy, as always calling him Ri Chan, and told that the boy built walls around his heart. That's why he doesn't feel anything. But you don't have to forget that he did it himself. Octo asked if the boy was okay, and told Li Han to pretend it was just a training session. And the main thing is that the guy is relaxed. The engineer added that they have a lot of time, so the boy has nothing to worry about. The main thing is that Khan should be more careful. But the young man replied that he was calm, and that he was stressed by the fact that Octo himself was in a hurry. The engineer was really worried. The entire scientific team gathered, and he did not want to embarrass himself in front of the old scientist. Smith told Alexander that no one had been able to tame the armor all this time, and the boy was unlikely to be able to either. He considered the young man to be a puppy who only wants to show off, but this does not mean that Li Han will get the suit. The audience in the hall was amazed by the appearance. The tele armor of the second generation looked really great, like a real weapon from the future. Indistinguishable even from a cyborg. The command was given and the test began. Although from the outside it looks like Li Han forced him to give the project to him, he wants to prove that he is worthy of it. The test was not very difficult, but the basic operations should be more difficult. From the beginning, the usual walking, running, and jumping. All this in full uniform and spear in hand. But in fact, to do all this, you don't even need to be an athlete, you just need to move. But even such simple movements are still difficult for the boy. The hall was surprised by the boy's performance. It was incredibly impressive for them. Octo asked who said that the boy failed. Scientist Smith remained silent. So far, everything was going well, and all that remained was to attack a stationary target. Suddenly, as Li Han made his last jump, the turret fired a powerful projectile at him, and the tele-armor survived. Octo did not understand why the cannon fired like that, and asked if everything was okay with the boy. The young man replied that everything is fine. But the boy added that there should not have been such a thing in the test. The engineer added that he would never have done such a thing. Octo believed that the old scientist Smith had done it and ordered the turret to be destroyed. The cannon began to attack the boy again, but he was able to avoid the charges even in such a heavy suit. He was getting closer to his goal little by little. The boy became angry and filled with more and more energy. The tele-armor began to glow brighter. Suddenly, Li Han jumped a very high distance and was directly above the target. Everyone was delighted with the jump. Octo said to aim directly at the cover because that is the car's blind spot. Li Han rapidly began to fly downwards and smashed the turret. There was not a single solid piece left from the target. Only fragments of scrap metal were everywhere. Scientist Smith was shocked by all this because the boy coped even with a task that was different from the initial test. Octo was incredibly comforted because he rubbed the old man's nose and praised the boy. At the meeting, Commander-in-Chief Alexander praised Octo. He did a really great job, so they will try to provide an additional budget. The engineer was already dreaming about the projects he would start developing. Meanwhile, Smith sat nervously on the side. Alexander wanted to move on to the next one, and the Oracle interfered because she played the console very enthusiastically. She shouted the names of techniques and interrupted the meeting. He asked Sergeant Red to calm the girl down. The instructor turned to her, and when she did not answer, he simply smashed the portable console on the ground. Red said that they have a meeting and you should listen and not play games at it. Oracle lost her temper. She didn't know what to do at the meeting because she doesn't care about Telebrony. She was assured that now they will agree on several issues and she can go. Alexander continued, Warharmut appeared suddenly and no one expected it, but was not prepared for it. This cannot happen again in the future. The Commander-in-Chief asked the Oracle if she could still predict the future. She listened carefully to the questions and looked into the future. The Oracle said that another vanguard of dragons should appear soon. She saw the burning city and the death of many people. There was complete silence in the hall. Everyone was shocked by the prediction. Alexander asked where and when it would happen. He was very worried. The girl replied that everything would happen in 10 days in Paris, and the Eiffel Tower was also predicted. Red was angry with the oracle. He wondered why she had come here now. The commander-in-chief hit the table and said that it was necessary to act immediately. Red took the girl by the hand and led her somewhere. She asked to let her go because she was in pain. Angry Instructor Red threw the girl against the wall. He asked what was her problem. The sergeant asked why the girl did not tell about the attack earlier, because most likely she saw the vision in advance. The oracle shouted that she was not at all interested in what would happen to the world. Red asked her to stop acting like a child and added that it wasn't just Catherine who had to make sacrifices. He hit the wall next to the girl and asked if she had any idea how old the boys from the second generation were. Red added that the young men are only 13 and some even 12 years old, but even they sacrificed their lives as children. But it didn't matter to Catherine. She asked what it was. She added that the word victim warms her heart. The oracle asked what she should sacrifice because she would die sooner than the dragons attack a second time. With tears in her eyes, she shouted that other people can at least plan their lives and she will die soon. Namely, in a world where dragons are defeated, people sincerely believe that they will be able to live in peace. Catherine did not know what to do because all she can do is look into the future where there will be no place for her. She was fed up with the fact that she had nothing but stupid powers, not even hope. Sergeant Red was caught alive. He improved and said that she was a good person. Oracle thought he was mocking her and left in tears. The ARC military has already gone to Paris, as has Lee Khan's group. The city looked surprisingly calm, but still, being there was somehow uncomfortable. When all the people left, the city became like a ghost town. Dimitro asked Del if there really wouldn't be anything left of the city after a week. The guy replied that it would most likely be like that. According to the prediction of the oracle, in 7 days the spatial gate should appear. Most often, gates and dragons appear in new areas, and not where rifts opened earlier. All elite military personnel from around the world are gathering right here and now. A group of young men saw in front of them a column of machine gunners. They greeted each other and asked if the guys were really a group of fighters from the ARC and asked to let them pass. But Dimitro replied that there was enough space on the road to bypass them. The machine gunner replied that the guys are sorcerers, so let them just fly over the squad. All the soldiers laughed. Dimitro got angry and wanted to kill him, but Lee Han asked him not to be provoked by the army. The young man asked who the men in front were, as it was clear from the badges that they were US soldiers. The machine gunner replied that they are not just soldiers, but the most elite unit in America and are called Hellboys. Khan has heard of them. They are all the same age. This is a really powerful squad. Although they do not possess psychic abilities, these soldiers have undergone numerous operations to improve their physical data. Rumor has it that they have much stricter bodybuilding standards than ARC. Therefore, they are all several times better developed than the same Dimitro. The squad leader joked that if it weren't for the boys' strength, the orcs would have made sandwiches out of them. The Hellboys laughed as a group. Lee Han replied that the joke was funny and told his boys that it was time to move on. The American soldier called the guys quiet and wished them a good trip. Dimitro said that they would meet again. The boys checked into the hotel. Knut was surprised at how big the ghettos were. The boy had never seen anything like this before. The young man jumped on the bed. It was very soft. Lee Han replied that he also saw this for the first time. All bedspreads were silk and the refrigerator was filled with various drinks. Knut offered something to drink, but Khan refused. The young man began to taste the roast. It was wonderful. He asked what was written on the package because he didn't understand anything. But Khan knew French. Knuth decided to go and collect food from other people's refrigerators because the rest of the fighters are unlikely to look there. But Lee Han advised the boy not to wander around the hotel because there are many other soldiers here besides them. But the boy quickly left and said that he did not really remember that the Khan was appointed commander. Lee Han decided to explore the main buildings nearby while he still had some time. Without preparation, they definitely cannot win. He remembered an old saying that the instructor had told him. Even if the sword will be needed only once in a lifetime, it must always be worn. Khan always remembered these words. Suddenly, Catherine enters the room. Meanwhile, Taisha is watching them. Oracle sat down next to Khan and leaned against the boy. He hugged her. Tisha went away. She was nervous because the girl was sleeping with Khan. Meanwhile, Dimitro found adventures as usual. He came to the pool to fight with the soldier. But he did not come alone, but with friends. The young man said that most likely the soldier was simply afraid to come alone. Otherwise, it is unclear why he attracted these ambles. The soldier replied that the boys were interested in watching the battle, and they would only watch. But if the guy tries to run away, then the conversation will be different. In response, Dmitri said that he would not use the magical powers that soldiers are so afraid of. Tisha went to the roof. She felt hot and wanted to breathe. Knuth saw silence and did not know where he was going. Meanwhile, Dmytro began to fight with the soldier. He turned out to be quite strong. The American did not miss a single attack from the boy. Suddenly, he intercepted Dima's blow and hit him right in the face. The young man decided to grab the opponent's arm and said that if he does not surrender, the arm will be broken. But the soldier easily pushed him away and almost smeared the boy's head on the ground. From that moment, Dima wanted to fight with all his might. But Taisha was so angry that she just wanted to beat someone. That's why she broke a soldier's finger. He got very angry about it. He moved his finger and wanted to hit his opponent. Suddenly, silence pierced the warrior's painful points and literally brought him to his knees. The rest of the military decided to deal with Taisha and all were defeated. The oracle told Li Han that she would tell the chief if the boy participated in this battle, he would die. Katerin said that one word from the boy and he will get to a safe place. But the young man said that the topic was closed. The girl started shouting at him, telling him that the dragon will definitely appear and then the boy will not escape death. He is still so young. The girl began to glow with a telekinetic glow and fell off her feet a moment later. Li Han caught her and wanted to call the doctors, but the oracle assured that she just needed rest. The young man saw the same mental problems that doomed telekinetic people to certain death. The girl dreamed that earlier she was standing in the window and wanted to jump. The military saw her. She was the only survivor. Suddenly, the girl woke up on Khan's bed. She saw the incredible identity of the boy with Sergeant Red. The boy noticed that the oracle had woken up and asked if everything was okay with her. She replied that she felt better. Li Han kicked her out of his room and asked her not to come in again. Catherine started yelling at Red. He wants to put on tele-armor, but he doesn't have a second life. She pointed to the sergeant's leg with her finger and said that with such a leg there is no place to go into battle, especially in tele-armor. Red replied that there were few boys left, and another team can be formed with him. Octo could no longer listen to the girl, so he asked to either calm her down or take her out of the laboratory. Catherine called the instructor and wanted to show him something. They were sitting at the bar drinking orange juice. Red told the girl if she was so worried about him, she should look into his future. Oracle replied that she should worry about his future. He just looks miserable from the outside. After these words, she poured out the juice and ordered to pour her something stronger. But the sergeant said that it is harmful to health. The girl became even more nervous because it was already too late to take care of her health. Red couldn't stand it and shouted that they were looking for a cure. That's why she was locked in the laboratory to wait for it. But Catherine replied that when the scientists have already made the medicine, she will feed the worms underground. The sergeant shared that he did not want her to be woken up. They decided to end it there. He poured the girl a high-grade drink and Catherine ordered the instructor to drink as well. The girl quickly got drunk, touched John Red's hair, and said that he was even more handsome that way. After that, the oracle woke up in the room of the sergeant himself. The girl understood that most likely he was sleeping in another place and called him a gentleman loser. Catherine remembered her meeting with Red. It was he who caught her when she left the window. He was unceremonious in his words, so he rudely asked why she was jumping if she was sending a rescue signal. The girl replied that she saw him catch her. Oracle took a bath. Suddenly, she found Red's resemblance to a woodpecker. She took one of the sergeant's cigars and put it to her mouth. The lady remembered how she had told the instructor that he was very handsome and began to scold herself for it. She was never able to smoke a cigar because there was no lighter anywhere. When the girl left Red's room, she met Taisha. The oracle tried to say something and was hinted that this was the sergeant's room. Catherine wanted to make excuses and Tisha called her a cheap thing and ran away. Oracle noticed that Taisha disliked her for some reason. Meanwhile, Octo has tweaked a few extra features in the tele-armor, such as the arm now being equipped with a device to replace the grappling hook gun. In addition, it is all removable, and if it is not useful, you can simply remove it. Another modification of the suit is a knapsack, but you need to be careful because if something hits your back, it will hurt. Workers on the side told Khan that if the engineer says that it will hurt, it is actually the same as dying, so you need to be really careful. Octo approached the boy and said that very soon what was foreseen will begin, and it is clear that the main fighter is Khan. From the beginning, 4 soldiers of the first generation will face the dragon. It will be ideal if only with their help they tame the dragon. After only 10 years of peace, humanity once again forgot about all its problems and began to live a carefree life. If they don't stop the dragons today, it's all over. Khan said that he would not allow this. But this time he will fight not for the sake of humanity, but for the sake of his brothers and comrades. The sky around darkened. The interspatial gate was about to open. All the troops arrived at the necessary places. Alexander looked after everything from the headquarters. Lightning began to converge at one point, directly above the place calculated by ARC. The soldiers were ordered to prepare for battle. But something was wrong. Monsters did not appear from the ground, they began to fall directly from the sky. The soldiers did not know what to do in such a situation. Khan watched this from the temporary engineering building, already in the telearmor. The first wave of monsters crashed and died immediately, but it serves as a cushion for the others. The military was given the order to shoot. All fighters opened fire on the enemy. After the wave of ground monsters ended, the winged ones flew away. Pilots were not simple monsters. They flew to the target and blew up. There were too many monsters. The order was given to retreat and blow up the first sector. The soldiers were leaving, and the guys from the ARC covered them. Preparations for detonation of the first sector have been completed. A group of Hellboys had wounded. The boys did not want to lose their commander, and if they were going to die, then all together. 2 soldiers prepared for death and shouted "Soldiers from Hell," but Dmitri saved them and said that they had some funny slogan. But he liked that they did not abandon their own. Knut was badly injured and regenerated quickly. He was enraged and even more motivated to kill all the monsters. There were still troops on the field, but Alexander didn't wait any longer, so he blew up everything. The explosion was simply huge. It could be seen from a dozen kilometers away. It was the last day for Paris. But in the hands of ARC, it is just a tool to fight monsters. Octo said that even if they win, there will be nothing left of Paris. Khan was worried if everyone had time to evacuate because it was a big explosion. Almost all the monsters were destroyed. Alexander ordered the stormtroopers to attack all the remaining monsters and at the same time prepare the first-generation telearmor because the dragon will appear soon. The ornaments in the sky were blurring more and more. A dragon would soon appear. 4 warriors in first-generation telesuits were already ready. This dragon was not much different from the one in the first war. Besides, it is much smaller. Although this is not War Harmouth, you still need to be careful. You need to aim for the dragon's wings. Dragons stay in the air with the help of energy, but left without wings, lose the ability to fly. In this case, the wings are just a tool, but without them, the energy is useless. They began to attack the dragon. It was necessary to block the view. And they are also preparing to cut off the wings. The dragon tried to do something, but to no avail. They cut off his wings and he fell to the ground. But there is no time for hesitation, because you need to finish him off. Falling to the ground, the dragon unexpectedly changed its form and began to attack. Red decided to kill the dragon by sacrificing himself. He wanted to destroy it by flying straight into its face. It was clear that the fighters of the first generation could not cope, so Khan went to help. The sergeant was furious. He wondered why they let Li Han go. He ordered not to get into it. The reason why the boy was released was very simple. Catherine ordered not to abandon Red, but to help him. Otherwise, if the instructor dies, she will join him. Oracle apologized to Li Han because she told him that the boy should not go out to battle. But now there is the only thing that holds the girl's whole life, namely Sergeant Red. She begged to save him. The guy replied that he was going to go get the sergeant anyway because he also didn't want Red to die just like that. The instructor started yelling at Khan and action had to be taken. Red wanted to sacrifice himself again, but Khan said that he did not go to the battlefield for the sake of humanity, but because he did not want to see the deaths of his comrades. Khan was warned that the dragon was using telekinesis, and a fierce battle began. The boy ordered to block the monster's view with fire, while the boy rewinds the laser wire. At the same time, it will increase the power of the jetpack to the maximum and kill the dragon. Before the flight, Octo said that it is possible, and the boy always does his own thing. If he gets into danger due to the psychosis of the dragon, then you need to increase your strength to the maximum. Due to the fact that the guy has dragon armor of the second generation, throwing out a huge amount of power, it neutralizes the negative power to it. A moment later, he killed the dragon. Sergeant Red then turned to Khan and said that the boy he had fought with had just saved the world. Suddenly, Li Han is walking around a beautiful oasis with dragonflies flying around and little birds with dragon heads walking around. Walking further, he sees a rock and a dragon is sleeping on it. The dragon turned directly to Khan. He said that he would do everything possible to assure the boy of his good intentions. But he began to utter thousands of incomprehensible sounds, and his eyes shone with pink-violet rays. Suddenly, the boy woke up. Knut was just in the ward. The young man slept for 3 days. Khan asked why his comrade was also in hospital clothes. Knut replied that he is undergoing a psychological examination, so he must be under the supervision of doctors for some time. On the battlefield, the young man was not himself. He single-handedly attacked the monsters, which made the doctors suspicious. Knut told Khan that he would do the same as our hero. From now on, he would fight monsters not for the sake of humanity, but for the sake of his loved ones. He would kill anyone who would hurt his comrades. It doesn't matter to him where his enemy is, even if he gets it from hell. An oracle came to Khan, and his friend quickly left the room. She sat down in a chair and asked how the boy was feeling. Khan replied that everything is fine because he is recovering quickly. Catherine apologized for dragging the boy into this, because everything should have its limits. She added that humanity must have lost its mind if it decided to subject 10-year-old children to such training, who later become the same soldiers on the battlefield. The girl despised them. Besides, it was too impudent of her to ask Han to save Red. But when he came out, it became much easier for her. The oracle added that she was no different from all of them. She had come to thank him. And in the end, she cried. Khan did not answer this and saw that she was a girl, fragile and very vulnerable. Suddenly, a message about a funeral arrived on her gadget, and the girl quickly left the ward. But the boy said before that maybe before the war, it would have looked like madness, and now it doesn't. He will continue to fight to protect the people dear to him. Li Han vowed to destroy all dragons. And the girl cried and went on. Kuro met with Del. He asked where Li Han or Knut was. The long-haired answered that the two of them were in the hospital. He would never come to the boy just like that. The young man was afraid for his friends. He asked what happened to them, and Del answered that if he was so interested, then he should go to the hospital himself. He ordered to follow him and keep up because he was not going to wait. Kuro noticed that he still didn't like the young man. 3 days later, Li Han had fully recovered and was drinking tea with Commander-in-Chief Alexander. But of course, the boy guessed that he was not called just like that. The chief wanted to discuss Kuro. He wants Han to take the boy to a real fight, because eventually he will also have to compete using the second-generation telearmor. They decided to release 11 more suits and planned to form 3 teams of 4 people, one of which would be led by Li Han. Now all the dragons except Warharmut have been killed, and if a team of 4 people of the first generation stood against him, they would easily defeat him. But now there is a new kind of monsters that even veterans can't handle. Dragons are evolving just like humans, and now the future of humanity really depends on the second-generation Telebron. It was explained to Li Han that he is the only one at the moment who can handle the existing prototype. Therefore, having Kuro nearby will be very useful. Del gave a thumbs up for taking so long to gather. All the A+ level fighters were summoned to the lab. Kuro felt that without Li Han's command, he was becoming his weak self again. A new device was placed in the engineering building. The guys say that it allows you to measure strength, the scientist explained. That the device collects information about mental abilities and numerical values, and then gives the statistics. All they need to do is put on a helmet and sit on a chair to use their psycho power to the maximum. Del, seeing the result of the previous fighter in 8,000 units, decided not to wait and start the test immediately. The measurement began. The boys cheered for him. The test showed 10,000 units, which was the best result among those tested. Del wanted to know what strength Kuro had, and the boy refused, because he was passing the test when he was transferred to the 3rd year. But Sasha Grace decided to say that Kuro has 12,000, even though he did not give his best. Del Simon said it was not fair and went to the exit. The nurse said that the boy was just a child, and that he should not have been treated like that. But Sasha Grace replied that otherwise he would not have left until he found out. Kuro told Khan about the tests. He asked what kind of units they were. The young man answered that it was an indicator of psychic power. Its meaning is the same as in video games. But Khan has never played this game before, and doesn't know exactly what the guy is talking about. ARC would not do this if there was no important reason for it. Most likely they want to use it in battle somehow. The boys asked Commander Khan what their mission was, and he replied that he would explain now.